Hello and welcome to LAWhammer. So this is our second attempt to get the stream going live. So if you're watching live, you'll be going, hopefully we have sound, and you'll be currently posting something along the lines of, I can hear you, Andy. It's all brilliant. Alternatively, it's all going frightfully wrong again, but I think we're good. So for the second week in a row, we've had a few tech issues before we get going. This will hopefully be the second and last time this occurs. We are currently on backup laptop.
And we're going to get ourselves a new goblin soon as well.
No sound for Dan.
Just Mike
cut.
Switch him off.
I mean it, Aaron. Act professional.
Cut. Right, so assuming sound is all clear and everything's good to go, we have a few things to say. Number one, obviously we are 2 players down this week. And we discussed way back when we were very first without players, that in no way means that LAWhammer has to come to an end. We don't like pressing on with our core story without everybody involved, unless, of course, their character should be dead or dying or somehow, pardon me, otherwise not involved. But we do like continuing the story. And sometimes there are parts of the story that we dive deep into because it's in the past and it directly influences what's happening in the future. Well, in the present. Or alternatively, we're doing this week, where we go over to a different part of the Empire and take a look at what's happening there. In particular, we're going to be diving down to Carberg. And for those of you who've been keeping up with all the side streams, you'll know that there's been quite a lot of business happening in and around Carberg with certain armies doing things. Now, as to the truth of what's happening there, no one's quite certain. So I thought it would be fun for us to have a little look at that this week and have a little dive in. That being the case, obviously everybody's going to be playing different characters this week. And this is often also the case. There is a certain amount of shenanigans going on in the background when we have our fun little side streams. The question is, who is up to shenanigans? And that is the first thing I say for all of you come along live. One of these characters is not who they claim to be. Can you figure it out? We'll put a poll up, assuming that Erin can get the poll running. If no one can, I'll do it myself in a quiet moment because I've got access to my tools over here. And I'll pop a poll up and you can decide if you get it right. This will make a significant difference to the PCs when they are up in Middenheim. We'll cover that at the start of next episode. If you get it wrong, it will make a significant difference to the PCs. And arguably in a better way.
No pressure.
So if we all act mad dodgy.
Yeah. So everyone's got different motivations at hand here. Do try to get it right though, because that'll be more fun. Because if you get it right, I will also release a little something for all of you out there. Indeed.
Mixed messages!
Threat, promise, hard to tell.
Okay, so that being the case, we've got ourselves 4 completely new PCs. We'll get down to who exactly they are once we get started. But before we get started, I do have a quick go buy dark deeds from me, followed up by a quick what's on the Rookery this week?
This week, Saturday 24th of August, on the Rookery, I am talking to Andy Law and Mark Gibbons about sequels and supplements. Is bigger always better? We're going to be discussing how we develop the second edition of Dark Deeds and much more besides. So please do join me 7 p.m. GMT on the YouTube channel and Twitch and Facebook, or catch us on the flip side on YouTube afterwards. I don't know why I said that.
You're so cool.
I don't know why I said that. But
I mean, it's recorded for posterity.
Peace out, bros.
Greetings, fellow kids.
I'm in the 70s.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
That was totally tuned there, Lindsay.
So, are we all ready for Carberg?
We need to shout out our snack sponsor.
Oh, snacks one.
I think we probably should do that before we go. We have snacks this week.
Thanks, Rob.
And that's because Roderick, hey Roderick, I hope you're out there watching. Roderick dropped by before we started streaming this evening and gave us snacks because Roderick rocks. He also brought his copy of Dark Deeds, which all good patrons and indeed watchers of LAWhammer have already bought, and we signed it, which was kind of awesome. So that has been signed for good old Roderick. Lovely to see you, Roderick. We even gave him a little Rookery badge because that was kind of nice and cool. So, Thanks, Roderick, for the snacks. Anything else I should say? Like and subscribe. You were all wrong.
Comment.
Oh,
And
comment.
comment.
Oh, yeah, do the comments. If you're
Comments.
currently sitting there watching this on YouTube later, do drop in a quick comment and say, I have commented like the good commenter that I should probably commenty be. Right, and maybe don't write that. Or maybe do. I mean, YouTube doesn't care. We do, though, because I actually give responses. Okay, I think we're good to go, aren't we? So,
Catch you on the flip side.
I don't even know.
let's get ready for episode 46.1. I'll catch you on the flip side. A light wind blows. The sun is high in the sky. We're just past high summer. And the stink of war is heavy in the air. Or at least, the stink of war as far as most soldiers are concerned. And that is just the stink of people. As soldiers are milling around the Altdorf camp. Some 12,000 soldiers, knights, priests, war machines, wizards, and more are all gathered out not too far from Carberg. Carberg itself is in the centre of a great marsh with some farmlands not too far away from it on the north side and over the river on the south side as well. The Altdorf troops are on the south side. And a small delegation has separated itself from that. Now, small delegation as far as that entire army is concerned, yet as it marches separate, it is not that small. At the head of it, on a horse, is a tall magister of the Grey Order. A tall grey hat, slightly bent at the end, long grey robes, and a long grey beard, getting picked at by the wind. He has a sword attached to his horse, which is, much like him, mostly grey. His face is old and worn. He, however, looks very comfortable in his steed. Riding beside him, to his right and slightly behind, is what appears to be a captain of, given the colours, Altdorf. He's wearing the red and the blue of the city. For those who recognise military insignia, he is clearly a captain, as said, but also of the first company of foot. The first company of foot, or the Altdorf Imperial Guard. He, however, unlike most of the Altdorf Imperial Guard, is not dressed ceremonially, where they often are in the palace dressed ceremonially, in golden armour at some points. Such is their ceremonial duty to look impressive for the various folks that might come to the palace. No, he's just dressed as a proper common officer. He also has sitting on his right breast the insignia of House Ludenhof, one of the primary military families of Hochland. Now, for those of you who might not know your Warhammer lore too well for 2512, Hochland is not a grand province. It is not somewhere that has its own vote. It's currently part of and ruled by Talabheim. Talabheim down to the south, across the river, rules all of Hochland up towards the north. So it's not its own electoral province. Sitting somewhat further back from both on the left-hand side, on a far smaller horse, is a woman of some nobility. She looks like she would be happier in court than she is out here with the wind plucking at the edges of her petticoats. She rides side saddle. She's all greens and yellows, with a high, frilly, laced collar that forms almost like a heart behind her. A thick ruff around that also. Her eyes are grey. Her hair is beginning to go grey, but is not quite there yet. She looks like absolutely everything has gone wrong. Like she would much rather not be on a horse. Like she would much rather not be part of this particular envoy, which is flying underneath a banner that's attached to the side of her horse with a slight flutter showing the signs of Shallian doves. They are moving underneath the signs of peace. An embassy, an envoy. And then last are the 342 dwarfs.
Come.
Which Lindsay will be playing.
As they are stomping along at the back, banners held, showing the colours of Carrick Ziflin. In particular, Clan Brintock, Clan Brintock, Clan Brintock, each one of them in dwarf runes underneath. Clan Brintock, Clan Brintock. We trade, we win, says one motto. We trade, you win, says another motto. We trade, we all win, says another motto. We trade, says at the top of Clan Brintock here, as they're making their way along. Gold trims every single one of their banners. At the very top, a dwarf head with gold coins around it. To the either side of the banner, a big pile of gold ore, which looks to the untrained eye like just hunks of rock. But the dwarves absolutely know it isn't, because they trade and they win. At the front of that is a golden-haired dwarf, and she carries a standard by herself that says underneath it, "This war must end." We trade, Clan Brintock. As she marches along, making it quite clear what her particular position is upon this particular war. Behind, there's, as I say, many dwarfs marching with her. Every single last one of them is male. As they stomp along. Our 4 ambassadors, let's call them that, know that they have quite a journey ahead of them. It's one of the reasons why the dwarfs are here, to provide a bodyguard for the entire journey. The encampment of, let's take the Empire's version of this, the Imperial Courts in particular, the rebels.
Rebel scum.
Perhaps even an alliance of sorts. The rebels is some 20 miles away, which is what you've got ahead of you, some 20 miles. And our ambassadors have each come with their own purpose. They were gathered together, not by any of the ambassadors, but by the Reichsmarshal. And each of them had a very different conversation. Conversation number 1 was the Reichsmarshal. And this is what Kurt Helborg said to him. Just bring it to an end. The whole thing, he says as he works at his enormous handlebar moustache with his hand, has to be stopped. I had to kill the boy. They wouldn't. That's why I've summoned you up here. Bring it to an end. It has to be brought to an end. Do you understand, Niemand? You and I have known each other for decades. Decades! Look at nobody. You sorted out that problem in Visenland. God's alone know how you did that. He looks at you.
Smile sagely. Not giving away my trade secrets.
Well, I need some of that brilliance here.
Of course, absolutely.
You know young Freud. You're aware of the damn trolls. He says, bring him to bloody heel. He's a good Empire man. He's honourable. He must understand this is horrific. You're going to be going with some dwarves there. They've been agitating, no other way of putting it. They've been hanging around at the periphery, demanding audiences, demanding that we bring this to an end. They've got some elder of their clan. Wouldn't know it, though. Hair's like bloody sunshine, that one. Wherever she goes, I swear she's just woven gold into it. Rubs at his forehead. This just has to come to an end. Bring it to an end, please. Please. This is quite different to, for example, what happened with good Arana, pardon me, get the name correct. Arana of House Flainsburg. Arana came to him, demanding that she get to go.
Of course, I should be right in the thick of it.
No, look, Arana, this is a diplomatic mission.
I can be diplomatic.
This has nothing to do with the Imperial Court. This has to do with my... No, look, Arana, look, I understand that you're...
Under orders?
This is not the time for meddling from the court. This has to be brought to an... I don't want another voice in that chamber mixing things up and making things difficult.
Me? Meddle? Never.
Stir Marshal Hagich would say otherwise.
Oh, take no notice.
Ah! God's woman, you're going to be the death of me.
Hardly. Take a breath. It'll be fine. I promise.
If you get in his way, and I found out that you've got in his way, I will rain hell down upon you.
You're going to give yourself conniptions if you keep doing that.
Just keep your mouth quiet.
I'll be the soul of discretion.
Quite different to the good captain. Sit down, Captain.
Sir,
He says, I have a task for you.
I'm at your service.
Lord Magister Newman of the Grey Order. He's a diplomat. He works mostly in Bisenland, Reichland, and Talbotland. He's very well regarded. He is very capable. He is also, unfortunately, going to be attended by a witch of a woman. Her name is Arana. She's from House Flensburg. Sounds like a bloody commoner. She's, I don't know, probably raised in a barn. She is, however, right, between you and me, she's the lover of the Stir Marshal. And you know that he's the regent of Stirland. Which effectively, between you and me again, makes her Elector Countess. She's been putting her feet into everything. And between you and me, she's as thick as you'd expect by the way she talks.
Okay.
So, basically, what I'd like you to be is officially, you're a decorated officer, which means that you are perfectly placed to be our ambassador's bodyguard. What you're really there to do is to talk over her at any potential opportunity that she speaks, ensure that she doesn't get mixed up with anything, and further, if you can, gently suggest to her that she doesn't attend anything. Now, unfortunately, she's effectively an Elector Countess. So we don't want to get on her bad side. But, I mean, do it gently. I know that you're a man of honor. I know that you'll do what's right.
Hi, gently.
Gently. I mean, gently. She's a noble. And she's effectively an Elector Countess. We don't want another bloody civil issue. What we're looking for is just, I don't know, stand in front of her.
Right. Right, okay. Does this Magister, does he know?
About her?
Aye.
Oh, he'll know. He'll probably know before I did. And he'll probably also know that she's an absolute busybody.
Right.
But he's diplomatic. He understands exactly how important she is to the politics of the Empire. So he'll be, if anything, he'll be civil. He'll be nice. When really he should be just sending her bloody off.
I'll do my best.
Gods. Why her? Just why? Why is she even here? Actually, find out why she's here. She has no right to be attending one of the armies.
Did you not just say it's because she's shagging someone?
Well, that's not why she's here. And not just someone, it's the Star Marshal. Hege.
Right, so talk over her and find out why she's here.
You don't need to repeat it back. You know exactly what you need to do. Don't even try to pretend you don't. He says.
Sir.
He says, when you're back, let's sit down. We're scheduled to have a drink. You and I. He says, we can discuss what you're doing over in the first company.
Okay.
And of course, with the tacit, you do well, you get promoted. Okay, right. How best to not upset someone who is potentially politically sensitive? Which by comparison was very different to the last. You had been harrying the Reichsmarshal pretty much since he arrived with his forces in Carberg almost a month ago.
With my sign.
You had marched through their camps when they had attempted to stop you. You had given them the clear line that this is Middenland, and you had the permission of the Elector Count of Middenland to go wherever you wished in his lands, which meant that the Reichland army had no right to stop him. So she had been marching through their army lines between their tents, accosting soldiers with, don't you think this war should come to an end?
Do we want peace? When do we want it? Now!
They had been singing during the Festag prayers to Sigmar. A song of peace about how Sigmar brought peace to the empire and bound them all together. They drank, and as the priests were attempting to give the great word of Sigmar to the people, the dwarves drowned them out completely. And when the priest upped their volume, the dwarves upped the volume of alcohol and in turned up their volume also. I think that you should leave with the delegation so that you can help them bring peace.
Right. Finally, you've seen sense.
I think that our dwarf allies from Carrick Ziflin must be recognized for the important diplomatic position that they hold in this instance. He says, with that, I recommend that you support our diplomatic envoy, our embassy indeed, that we are sending currently to the Duke of Black Rock.
Right.
Sigismund of House Jungfreud. Says, now I know that your family has strong connections to that family, so I imagine you will be invaluable in these talks.
Absolutely, you're so right.
And as you know, he says, the people of the Empire are impressed, always impressed by a force of arms to show the weight that you have behind your words. Now, we have our army here, which they are aware of. But to ensure that your full weight is understood, I recommend that you bring everyone so that he can be best influenced your way of thinking.
Right. I mean, are we just going to use words?
Oh, take them too.
Right.
Good. He says, good. Before you go, would you like a drink?
Aye.
And it ended with one last meeting. You're taking the dwarves.
Right.
He says, thank you. He says, consider it a gift from an old friend.
Getting very mixed messages from you, old boy.
He says, she is strongly in support of exactly the same message that we're looking for. She will be, I think, a strong advocate for your position. She'll be difficult to control, but a strong advocate nonetheless.
Known quantity is a virtue.
Exactly. you might not know the background there. You probably do, but in case you don't, she has been trading with House Jungfreud, her family, for 2,000 years, and is particularly disappointed that they are playing at war instead of trading. So she has push towards resolving this. I believe she may have already spoken to him, and he blamed the Imperial Court, which is why she's here. She wasn't exactly forthcoming when I attempted to interrogate her about it, though, so perhaps there's a different story there. I'll leave that for you to perhaps determine on your way there. And the four of them left the camp the next day. An entire throng of dwarves making their way out. Bread talk, no war. A side-saddled lady, an imperial captain, and a grey wizard, and one of the finest diplomats of the empire. Surely nothing can go wrong. But in turn, you all know that you're not entirely sure why the others are here. I mean, some seem obvious. I mean, the dwarf seems obvious. They have been agitating in the camp for almost since you arrived in Carberg, for a month now. But why would a lady of court want to come along to a peace meeting? Who's going to be the first to bring it up as you make your way through the sunshine on your 20-mile?
Me. What's your business here? I understand you're the diplomat appointed. I understand you're a bodyguard, but lady, what's your business here? So I'm clear, right?
I do find your blunt speaking very... It's like a breath of fresh air outside of the courts. I'm here just to make sure that peace is seen. I'm a representative of the Imperial Court, and I'm happy to just keep an eye on things. Don't mind me. I'm just here mainly to observe.
Why?
Right.
Do you not trust him to do his job?
It's not about me. I go where I'm
Because
told.
he'll come back and do a report himself.
That's fine. He can do that. That's not a problem. I'm told to go, so I go.
I would suggest, since we're a diplomatic mission seeking to promote unity in the Empire, perhaps we begin with unity amongst ourselves. And there's no
Seems
need to
very
be
sensible.
antagonistic.
No, I just asked the question. Which she answered, and it's
A dwarf
grand.
banner from behind, written in colours in peace, sort of settles in, so it's sitting right behind all of you.
Well, so just so
And
I'm
marches there.
just so I'm clear, I'm Gledrika of Clan Brintock, and I represent Carrick Ziflin in this. I've spoken to the Eye King myself, and I've got a very clear message from him that this is interfering with our trade. It's interfering with our trade to Marienburg. It's interfering with our trade in Altdorf. It's interfering with our trade to Carberg, to Middenland, to Middenheim, to Nordland. It's interfering with our trade into Bretonia. It's interfering with our trade across the Grey Mountains. And she's just going to go on like town after town after town after town.
No interruption on this.
No, I just nods.
Yeah.
15 minutes later, as she comes to the end, interfering apparently with her trade directly into Kislev as well, don't you know?
And if you interfere with trade, you interfere with gold. And that's something I can't be abiding. Gold interfering.
I understand you have history of trading with BlackRock for many, many years.
We got history of trading across the whole empire.
Of course, but I meant more specifically with the family that we're
Oh,
going to be meeting.
absolutely. Good traders. We trade, we win, they win.
We all win.
Different banner comes in mind.
All
Stomp, 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 stomp.
There's out to be done when you're trading that you can't do when you're piecing.
I'm imagining like a ballet of the banners as they try to work out which one applies.
Different banner comes in. Peace. Clan Brintock. Yeah, that'll be it.
The dwarves high-fiving each other to get it right.
We got this. Yeah, we got this. As they march forward. You're making your way initially along a long road, passing through the marshes and heading southwards down the river. River Booging, in fact. Apparently, you expect to not meet the camp, but the outward scouts after about 2 hours maybe worth of walking. It's quite the crump march. And indeed, it is about 2 hours when you spot your first awareness of the other scouts. Apparently, there's been several disagreements among the scouts on both sides, and of the two, the more aggressive by far have been the young Freud scouts, pushing deep into the marshes and keeping the scouts from the other side back, harrying them, and quite willing to go to quick blows, or alternatively, as has often been the case, shots, keeping them back. It has meant that in many respects, the outdoor forces have been a little bit blind to the south. You know that wizards have attempted to scry out the area. They've attempted to use animals to creep in, to fly in. Indeed, several different types of wizards have done their best bet to get in here, and they've all failed. Spells have been dispelled, meaning that the scouts probably have wizards amongst them. However, you didn't expect this sort of wizard, as the scouts drop out from the side of a crag, squelch over, 5 of them dressed in black, one of which is an elf. And an elf...
I can feel the bristling.
An elf wizard at that. Also wearing black, all of them bearing the symbol of House Trot. As to the side, a somewhat garrulous looking fellow with a nasty scar breaking up his mouth at that part of his face and tearing open his lip, leaving a tooth constantly showing there, comes forward and goes, "You're a bit far from home," says, "I'll suggest you turn back."
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Lord Magister Niemand. I'm here, as you can see, under the banner of peace. That's an embassy from the Imperial Court.
Well, we didn't shoot you.
To meet with young Freud. To resolve this, to find peace that will satisfy all parties.
And he looks back at the elf. The elf lifts up his head, and you see a collar around his neck. A little tag, symbol of House Trot, pardon me. House Trot. It nods once. Alright. You can continue on then. Come on. And they go back, squelching across the march. move
Nice
up
to
the
meet
crag,
you.
and they're gone.
Friendly sorts, aren't they?
Yeah, charming.
Is that not a bit odd? Having an elf.
Yeah, he seemed to be bound somehow.
Oh, right. You can never trust the Elgi. You can never trust them. What they seem to be is not what they are. They never speak plain, they never act plain, they never... I will say, though, that this war has been blockading the trade that we do with some of the Elgi, because some of them can be good traders, I'll give them that.
It's just normally they're the ones who would be given orders, not taking them. Just thought it was a bit strange.
Well, what you got to understand with Elgi, 15-minute lecture
So,
about how they'll take anything because they're dishonourable. They'll hide behind plain sight.
Why, mistress, to know where you're keeping that whiteboard.
pardon? Not a thing. As you make your way southwards, and the dwarf provides much entertainment with many a description of the grudges that her particular clan holds with elves who broke their trade agreements. Some Well, you think it may have been thousands of years ago before even the
Shocking.
Empire existed.
Yes.
And
It's nothing personal.
she gets really worked up about one in particular.
Nothing personal. She gets really worked up.
Really worked up about one in particular, which was a trade deal that was held all the way up into the Middle Mountains between her hold at Carrick Ziflin and up to Carrick Skug to the north. That was not only broken by elves who used to be part of that ongoing trade route, but attacked, which is tantamount to kinslaying as far as he was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
As in the ancestor. And
Yep.
the ancestor marked it in his book of grudges as elves are kinslayers and marked down the particular line of elves, House Inarian. May their entire line be ended. Kinslayers.
Is that the source of the curse on that line?
This guy.
One angry dwarf.
There's nothing worse than a kinslayer.
Is that maybe 2?
No.
Well, that used to be your place.
Don't be ridiculous.
Crump.
I'm just teasing.
Probably not the wisest thing to be teasing.
It's about 5 miles after the first line of scouts, where you're not interrupted again, that you get your first idea that there is definitely other scouts. This time, demogryph riders. Long beaks, muscular long bodies, tails flacking behind them, as they bound along with knights sitting across their back, all black armoured, the fluttering back banners of, again, House Trot. Indeed, the front one has a larger banner, which is holding the tame heraldry upon it. As it bounces over, you see one of them scrambling up a tree with the knight on the back of it, and sits halfway up the tree, looking out as you pass by and just watches you as you go by. Another couple of demogryphs go bouncing off in that direction. One lopes down low, and I do mean low down, meaning that he's actually shorter than the height of a normal man with his feet tucked up as they prowl in through the lower parts of the edge of a small copse and then just disappear into the leaves there. Their scouts are out. That's the first ones you've seen other than the first ones that encountered you. Dwarves. Crump, holding their banners of peace in the direction.
It's just the words this guy get them told. Right, good lads. That's it.
Exactly. Your first actual emplacement is about 2 miles after that, where the road itself is blockaded, which is just wrong. Just wrong. Blockading roads. A sign there. They've decided to do it right at the edge of the Duchy of Hallscrook. There's a nice sign, slightly an angle. Welcome to the Duchy of Hallscrook. It's old and very faded. Proper Umgi work. Let's retranslate that for you. It looks like it's less than 50 years old. It's new. And it's already falling apart.
It's embarrassing for them.
They've made it out of wood.
Do they think they're Ilgi?
Why?
They couldn't even sing it like they do. It's
Why-
dead.
Why would they make something out of wood if they wanted it to last?
Not deadwood.
Well, she wouldn't even think that. Dead wood is just wood. Wood is wood. There's no living wood or dead wood. It's wood. Wood has got different purposes, not sitting out for all seasons. That, no.
Right, now this is a classic example of the poor thinking of your people.
Mm-hmm.
There is, of course, almost 100 other soldiers there, but all the dwarf is particularly concerned about is the shoddy sign. The blockade itself is made of a rather rudimentary Umgi gate, which is being pushed into place to blockade the place. Here, however, we have got ourselves young Freud soldiers. Southern soldiers. These South Reichland soldiers. As the captain there goes, "Oh, hello." It says, "Lord Magister, we were told you might be coming." Confirmation that they've got a relatively decent, possibly the elf, passing on the message.
Probably another elf around here somewhere.
Yeah.
They get everywhere, these Elgi, apparently.
Can you state your purpose?
I'm here as an embassy from the Imperial Court to broker peace.
Good luck. He says,
Thank you, Captain.
"You'll need to wait here. We have somebody reporting back to the camp.
Of
If
course.
they wish to hear from you, they will send someone."
Please do let them know it's Lord Magister Niemand.
Yes.
And Glenn Raker of Clan Brintock from Carrick Ziflin.
Carrick Ziflin.
Representing 3 of the warrior clans and the Eye King's thoughts.
Under his breath, he goes, "Bugger." Bugger. Well, why don't you, looks like that's quite the host you have with you. But I can offer the delegation refreshments while you wait.
That would be amazing.
He
That's
says,
very kind.
"If you wish to take your officers in, they're not officers, they're guildsmen."
Oh, they're not officers, they're guildsmen.
Right, yes. So if you, your chief guildsman, would that, whomever you think is appropriate for a small gathering that represents yourself in the embassy, he says, will that do?
Right, well, that would be me.
Right, then please do come. We've got, please come, let them through the gates. Which is how you find yourself in a tent. The rough grass beneath, nice table, ale, red wine, and an ice wine. You can see the frosty symbol laced upon the front of it, with House Hallscrew going over and a big swan wrapped around the whole thing. As he says, "So I'm sorry to say we're not very well stocked, but I have red wine if you prefer, alternatively ale."
Well, the reason you're not very well stocked is because of trade. It's been interrupted, and it never should have been.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. He says, "I only sadly have one stein that would..."
Well, we know why that is, don't we?
One stein that you could easily drink from. The rest are for humans. He says, "Would you like something to drink, Mom?"
I would love that. I'm
He
just
says-
delighted to be sitting on something that isn't moving for a little while. Lord Carolus, by the way. "House Newfallion," he says. Well, thank you kindly. I'm Arana of House Flensburg.
"Ludenhoff, by any chance?" He says, "I recognise your heraldry."
Aye.
He says,
Conrad.
"I think I've heard of you.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Would you like to have something to drink, Lord Magister?"
Wine.
As he sits down, "Serving myself. No servants, up to the front line. You're right, this war, what a mess. Couldn't it be resolved swiftly, don't you think? It's not for me to decide, I'm sorry to say. But I understand that you would want to see it brought swiftly to a close."
Well, exactly. We've been trading with your family for years. And this war, well, that just stops all this trade. And when trade don't flow, people don't flow around this empire.
Well, then I'd suggest that perhaps you consider taking your grievance directly to the Emperor.
Oh, well, I have.
And I trust that that is what brought you to Carberg.
It is.
Then perhaps you will be of some use in the upcoming diplomacy. I presume that's why you're here, Lord Magister Niemand. Your reputation precedes you.
Indeed.
I heard that peace has been secured in the south.
Correct.
Astonishing.
Once all parties were able to take a calm breath and reflect on the situation and discuss what they actually wanted, peace is eminently achievable.
Well, let's hope so. He
What
says,
happened in South?
Well, there was a horde came up from the south and razed a town whose name I found. Fildorf.
Capital student line.
Thank you, memory. Raised Fildorf. And the forces of the Countess von Leibowitz saw a vacuum and decided to fill it. And this was not much appreciated by the Toppenheimers.
I know the Toppenheimers, ruling family down there. They lost half their number in the siege of Fildorf, from what I hear.
But eventually all parties realised that we're stronger when we work together, and peace was achieved.
Exactly.
Trade was restored.
That's good.
Well, that's something. So, what I heard was real then.
Indeed.
Well, I didn't expect that. Well, perhaps you will be successful here. So that would be something, wouldn't it?
One has a reputation to uphold.
Then, between you and me, I think it's quite likely that it'll be one of the trots that come to fetch you. Yeah, that's all I can say in the matter. It'll probably be one of the trots.
And what does that mean?
I think it means your man's not in charge. Or maybe he's just not interested in talking.
Oh, I really couldn't say one way or the other. He says, would you like a top up though? You seem to have finished already. He says he pours. Oh, I'm going to have to get another, pardon me. And he goes down. On the outside, he talks, something the dwarf can clearly hear. She has very sharp ears.
Conrad will have moved to the entrance just to kind of stand at it to...
Keep it
To
guarded.
bodyguard.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's
And,
within his earshot.
You hear, when she comes, bloody tell her the dwarves are here as well. And you hear a, yes sir, anything else? Says, yeah. It's House Brintalk. Pardon me, Clan Brintalk. Papa is going to be absolutely livid to hear that they've come marching. Oh, right, so what do you want me to say? Just tell the trots that they're here. Right you are. Off he goes. Comes in. Here we go. Pouring more. Oh, another one's gone. And he waffles on about very little. In the time that you're here, you gather a couple of core little facts, but not very much. He's here with about 100 men. They've been guarding this particular road for about the last week. They've been moved from further south. The camps are somewhere to the south. Beyond that, he is just vague, even when given some rather pointed questions. He, after all, is nothing more than an extension of someone else's will, so thus doesn't want to speak on anyone else's behalf, which indeed he uses as an excuse when the questions become a little bit too difficult to answer. I wouldn't like to say anything on someone else's behalf. It is up to them to speak for themselves.
Very wise.
I hope so. However, you hear the arrival. A distant snarl, followed by a closer snarl, and then a noise from outside, a bird-like call, and movements of people before there's a flap of the tent being moved. And, sir, they're here. Right, well, I'll see who they've sent first, and I'll either escort you out to meet them or bring them in, depending upon the circumstances.
Leans a look through the flap as he goes out.
Sadly, not enough to see.
You see Conrad's back.
The dwarf might have a lower vantage point. He might catch more.
There's all four heads poking out right now.
In the distance, there's noises, but you're nowhere near close enough to be able to hear. And eventually he comes and says, they're here to escort you to the south. Says, if you could please come with me.
Thank you for your hospitality, Captain.
Nice to meet you. Good luck.
Pleasure meeting you all as well. Best of luck with your delegations. Best of luck with your delegations. Gods, please. He then leads forward. Leads you round past some tents over towards a group of demigryph riders. 30 of them. Along with, behind them, off in the distance, a group of just loose demigryphs. Prowling around, some of them in at each other. Claws out. Each one of them, on average, just underneath head height at the shoulder. Some of them are a good bit bigger than head height. Some of the larger examples. Beaks ranging from about this big down to about this big. So they're big. They're horse sized, but nasty. Yeah, that's going to bite right through a man without too much difficulty. From where you are, you can see a couple of them have slipped out. They're just sitting on their haunches, looking out from a rock. One of them is pecking away at one of its paws. To the front is a woman, bald, with more scars on her face than, well, free flesh. That's not quite true, but at least seems like that. Like there's more scar than there is skin. It's not quite that bad, but there is a lot. However, her face is extremely finely made. The symmetry, and we just go to just base values, is spot on. In a different environment, you might have even thought, yep, she looks sort of pretty. But no, not at all. Her eyebrows are dug in. She looks weary. And also quite used to, you would presume, command. As she looks over at the captain and hops off of a monster. A very large demigryph. A very large. Leg hikes down as she steps over and goes, so these are them, is it? Says, you'll be the Lord Magister.
Lord Magister Neiman, pleased to meet you.
Shalgrave of Hast Trot, she says. Baroness Shalgrave. Nods once at you.
Rodrieka Clan Brintock.
I've heard of you.
Carrick Ziflin.
I've heard of you. Who's this one?
Arana, House Flinsburg. Pleased to meet you.
I want an oath from you. But you're not here to assassinate anyone.
I'm not here to assassinate
I
anyone.
want an oath before Verena herself. I want to hear it.
I swear upon Verena, I'm not here to hurt anyone.
Or assassinate.
Or assassinate.
Right. I don't know you. Where you from?
Stirland.
Stirland. That your ass symbol, is it?
That'd be right.
Wait. Yeah, that'd be right. Turns round. Bodyguard. Fair enough. Have you got mounts?
We do.
Oi.
How about yourself?
Presume not.
No. You'll be walking,
Oh,
thanks very
I'll
much.
be walking.
Uh,
1 foot. As the ancestors. As the ancestors did.
We keep swapping.
She's making fun of her already. That's not awkward, right?
You need dwarfs are
Yeah.
sassy.
Suddenly you sound a lot more attractive.
Catch you on the flip side, eh?
she frowns. All right. All right. We'll walk then. And she smiles with a smile that does not hurt her eyes.
Does she have any kind of reputation that Conrad would have heard of?
No.
No.
You know of the trots, but
Yeah.
she's an unknown quantity to you. She doesn't have much of a reputation outside of Tame. She's known in Tame.
Yeah.
Can only imagine.
Absalom Trop, you've heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's part of Trot's Marauders, but not this one.
It sounds like she's got the bone structure of Zenicar Trot.
as she says, walk. Pat, pat, pat. And then says, in a language you don't understand, something. As it bows its head and gallops off. And then all of the wild ones follow out after that one, leaving the bodyguard.
Impressive.
Why?
She sorts out some rings, rolls her shoulders, and says, "Well then, let's go. So you're for peace then, are you, Magister?"
Yes.
Yeah, good luck with that. I can't see it happening.
I believe it's in everyone's best interests for us to...
And do you believe it's in the best interests of the Imperial Court to give Ulricsberg back to its rightful owners?
I'm not here to negotiate about Ulricsberg. I'm here to negotiate...
Well, then
this
you've not
peace.
got any peace. It's going to be as simple as that. I'll tell you ahead of time. I know exactly how this is going to go.
That just may be, but I'm obviously honour bound to negotiate with the Graf Director.
Yeah, I understand. I know who you are. She says, "I heard about you. I've heard about you." You, Ludendorff, is it?
Aye,
I've heard of you. Heard of you.
of me. Not my father.
No.
Right. Was it good?
Heard you're a good swordsman.
Practice.
Yeah. Classic Aldorf. Talk. You've been in Altdorf too long. You should go back to where you came from up in the islands.
She's a xenophobe.
Yeah, that's where you should probably be. And you wouldn't be in this mess.
It's my honour to protect the Empire and do what needs to be done.
Is that what you think you're doing, is it?
Aye. I'm on the right side.
Everyone says that. Everyone thinks they are. So are you so sure you're right?
I'm following the Emperor. I haven't
Emperor's
broken any of
always
his decrees.
And what of the Emperor's the problem?
That's not for me to say. That's for the counts.
Right, well, I think you're all the problem. It's, as I've said before, I'm going to have to say it again, aren't I? This is interfering with trade, and trade is when we all win, when trade flows. It's interfering with trade in the Grey Mountains, it's interfering with trade to Bretonia, it's interfering with trade to Marienburg, it's interfering with trade to Carberg, outdoor Flensburg.
15 minutes. I've got to say,
The whole
now I understand why Kurt Helberg's center.
What about
Secret
Kislev?
weapon.
Kislev and
Brilliant.
all?
What?
Kislev, tried.
Oh,
Aye.
I'll get to that.
I'll get to that. None of your lips.
No, it's just in case.
Indeed, she does eventually get to it.
The cheek. The
At the end
cheek.
of it, at the end of it, she says, "So, what would you do if someone took one of your caravans?"
Well, we would take action.
That's all I have to say.
Of course, your action would ensure that trade continues to flow.
Of course.
Would you reclaim your goods, no matter what?
I mean, I presume she
Yeah.
would. Oh, aye.
We know.
Oh, aye.
Or you would take your gold's worth from that.
But how did they take the caravan? How?
Pardon?
Was it legally or was it thieves? Because I think the answer is different.
I mean, the dwarfs support trade and therefore also presumably support things like taxes to maintain the upkeep of roads and bridges and so on.
And legal decisions.
Right. Well, I think you're being cheeky, but I'm not sure how, Lord Magister. I
Genuinely swear I'm not.
Right.
No disrespect is intended.
Right. Because of course we pay our taxes. Are you
Exactly.
implying I wouldn't pay my taxes?
Never. Indeed, I was merely illuminating the point the captain was making.
Oh, lads, get out the signs. We pay our taxes.
They're gone. It's only you.
No, she's taking
no,
them.
take it.
no, they're still
be
here.
Oh, I thought you said you were the only rep.
Yeah.
Um,
No, when we
Oh,
went
not
into
yet.
For the
Yeah,
tent.
yeah.
They wouldn't all fit in the tent.
no,
I mean, they're only
marching. They're marching a good 30 feet back. Crump, crump,
I
crump,
love
crump.
the idea that they've got like a whole rack of
Yeah,
different
she's
banners.
like, get that tax sign!
Yeah.
We pay our taxes.
It's like he's
We
in
want
the filing
receipts.
cabinet.
Shalgreen smiles and says, "Yeah, exactly."
I'm going to be able to recite that by the time we get there.
Tell me about Flensburg. What's it like there? Rural,
Yeah.
rural,
Farmland.
not far away from the Sturhugel.
Lots of
Lots.
farmland and people tilling the earth. Good souls, mostly.
A lot of
Keep
sheep up in
ourselves
the
to
low hills.
ourselves.
Lots of sheep in the low hills.
Livestock. A few vegetables. You know, it's good growing.
Good trading in wool.
Oh, aye.
It's not far from forest, is it? As I recall.
There are some woods.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks at you. Yeah, I bet they are. Keeps on walking along.
Do you like woods? Keen on forestry?
Yeah. He says, got a bit of a walk ahead of us yet.
Right.
Are we walking or riding at this
We're
point?
all walking because the dwarf can't ride.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wearing the right shoes for this. I missed my carriage.
Yeah.
Oh no. Let's get it hitched up.
Yeah.
You need to have good sturdy boots. Slacks boots.
I think you might be right. Maybe you could trade me some.
Lads!
Bring forth the boots.
They don't have
They
boots,
don't
I
have
know.
any
No,
boots.
but they've got a sign saying we trade.
That's fine.
Would you like to buy yourself a good banner?
No, it's because she said maybe you could trade them. She clearly hasn't got the message that
But
we
you
trade.
definitely can
So they've got to get the lads with the we trade sign.
And as they come up, that little smirk, and then she just keeps walking.
Bloody unge.
It takes almost 3 hours of walking. There's a stop about 2 hours in. She is clearly agitated as the wait for a bite is taken. Her foot is constantly tapping one arm, making an irregular beat upon her chest as her head nods slightly, almost as if she's listening to music. Almost as if she's working herself up for something. But then the walking comes again. She holds herself like a fighter, always. And occasionally, at the sound of a passing animal making its way through the undergrowth, or alternatively, a bird screeching in the distance, she quickly turns to it before assessing that it's not dangerous and there's nothing for her to worry about. You catch the outriders before anyone else spots them. Again, demogryphs. But you were looking for them this time. They're naturally camouflaged, but the black of the riders is a little bit too deep with the shadows, and it's the riders that you spot making their way through the copse of trees, thinning trees off to the side, drifting between the trunks.
I give Neiman the nudge and just change up.
You both
Sage
have,
nod.
you both have battle tongues, so you can
Yeah.
just the riders.
Presume that she has it as well,
One would
so
presume she
probably
does.
non-vocally because
Mhm.
is she walking ahead of
Well,
us?
battle tongue is non-vocal,
Yeah.
as much as you wish to be.
but
It's a
is
method of
she
communication.
ahead? Like she's not looking.
Oh, yeah, but she's not really looking in
So
your
relay
direction.
info.
As you make your way along. And then cresting over a ridge, you can see down ahead a relatively small camp. It's not large, about 15 tents, one of which is far larger than the rest, and is in the deep teal and silver trim of House Youngfreud. One banner hangs limp in the summer sun. You think one of the Youngfreud banners, given that it's got the right colour, but it's all hanging limp, so you can't tell which.
Is that Jungfraude banner I spy?
Looks down. Yeah,
Which one?
says. We'll find out when we get there. Never can be certain. Banners down. Let's see who they've sent. This is where you're going to be having your talk, I believe.
Right.
Is there any other banners, or is it just the
Just the
Jungfrau?
one up. Looks down. Partly the only one there so far. You'll be given refreshment down there before talks, proceedings. Is there anything you need?
Or
Well,
Magister? Anything?
I mean, he's probably not eaten for a while.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, a repast would be most appreciated.
Not. I'm sure it's made for you. Says, fortunately, we're not prepared to feed all of your people.
Right, well, I'm here to tell you right now, I don't need them. Young Freud's, dwarf friends in their line. I'll be going myself.
Giving orders to your
Yep.
folk to make their own camp over on the other side. Look after themselves.
Yep. Right.
Guildmaster goes in. Castle. I don't trust them. Says, I don't trust them one bit. Says, we're respectfully showing our intentions here, and it's quite obvious that they do not respect our intentions.
Well, I will judge that when I meet the man himself.
You know how young they are. They trade with elves.
Aye, but you know how the young Freuds are.
Well, maybe if you see one, I'm just trying to make it clear that I don't trust them. Any deal says you make sure you draft it if there's a deal. Anything an hungry builds will fall apart in the slight wind, not even a stiff one. I mean, you could fart on one of their treaties and they'd fall apart.
Well, that's good advice.
Mm.
If I were Babe, you think I don't know all that? Go on.
I really hope. Does Conrad speak Cazalit?
No.
Oh.
You do, though.
But will, of course, show no reaction.
As they, hey, ho, crump, 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 crump. As they go down and start dismantling their packs and building tents.
Is everything all right? That seemed a bit heated.
Oh, okay.
You're taken down and given a large tent for you to rest, drink, eat,
Oh,
or alternatively wait. On the inside, there is furniture, actual furniture. A good
Nice.
table and chairs, obviously, but there's also 2 chaise lounge if one wishes to lounge on a
I'm
chaise.
I'm gonna lunge straight away.
The table itself is laid up with not exactly a fine spread of food, but it's certainly more than enough to impress, given it's in the middle of effectively nowhere by a side road, and clearly not in preparation of an expected embassy.
This will teach me not to travel with staff.
Shalgree looks over it all, pulls a face, almost as if to suggest that she didn't expect there to be even this. Makes her way out, and at the tent flap says, I'll have them call you when you're ready. When you're going to be ready?
Ready when you are, my dear.
Well,
Give us just a few minutes to gather ourselves.
Give you half a bell. And then makes her way out.
It's important to have a full stomach before we begin negotiations.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, they could go on for a long time.
Exactly.
That's why.
Fortify oneself. One wouldn't want to lose concentration and miss an important detail.
You'll admit to being slightly disappointed. You were hoping you get to see their composition. You were hoping you get to see their force. Nope. They've clearly decided to meet in neutral territory, well, deep in their territory, but you know what I mean.
it also makes sense.
And of course
to
it
not
does.
show your
But
hand.
that doesn't mean that you're not slightly
Yeah.
disappointed.
I guess he does look down on them, so maybe thinks they're not that smart to even consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're given half an hour, unless there's anything you particularly want to prepare during the course of that half an hour. Nope.
Take my
Shall I-
shoes off, rub my feet a little bit.
At about the half-hour mark, you hear the arrival of hoofbeats, quite a number of them. If anyone wants to look, or if they're quite happy just staying where they are.
Conrad he's not really relaxed. He's kind of been up, walking around, so he will
Pop out.
look out.
Horsemen, a lot of them. And at the head of them, a man in golden armor with a base plate with an actual face on it. A golden helm with swooped wings sitting behind it. He is also on a horse.
He's also a horse.
Also on a horse.
Okay. I was like, wow.
He is
a
also
cool
a
horse.
golden
Here,
horse.
is young
No,
Freud a
he's not.
horse?
Is it a centaur?
As he drops down and looks back at his men, taking off the front of his face helmet, a very, very pretty face drops out from in there. He goes, "Go pitch yourself somewhere. Apparently there's talks to be had." Looks over.
Are they riding under
sees you,
banners?
and you know who that is. You don't even need to guess. That is Trot,
Zendikar.
Duke of Tame, Zendikar. Never heard of him riding around in golden armor, though, as he then takes off his helm, and underneath, a golden laurel. He's an imperial champion, a hero of the empire, given to him by the previous emperor, for saving his life. At his chest, an imperial cross, the highest accolade the empire offers. To the side of that, looks like he's not just a hero of the empire, he's a hero of Middenheim. That looks like a fang, or is that a talon? It's definitely one or the other. Little wolf's tail. A hero of Talabecland and a hero of Isenland. As he comes down and goes, "Ah, Captain," he says, "Ludenhof, as I recall. I met you when you were 5. You might not recall. It was some time ago." Up close as he walks over with a half smile on his face. He's much older, you think, than he looks. He looks easily 20s. But that doesn't make any sense because
Yeah,
his
been
kids.
around. Yeah.
But up close, you can see the slight crinkling lines around his eyes. He's completely, with his helmet off, bald. As he smiles, "I've heard, well, you've become quite a swordsman."
Depends on who you ask, I suppose.
You're in the Imperial Guard, hand-selected, I hear, from
First.
the Emperor. Nods once. "So who are you protecting?"
Lord Magister Niemand.
"Who are you protecting him from?"
Well, isn't it obvious?
"Never when it comes to politics. Never when it comes to politics."
Isn't that a bit ironic, you wearing all that?
"We were skirmishing." He says, "Besides, it's my ancestral armor. It's correct for me to wear it in such matters."
Not the armor, your crest.
"Well, I earned it."
Well, you're a rebel. You're actively fighting against the
What?
people who gave you that.
I'm not actively fighting against that. I'm fighting against the Prince of Altdorf. That's who we declared war against.
Who's the emperor?
No. The Emperor is a separate position to the Prince of Altdorf. You really need to get your politics in
Same
mind.
man.
It doesn't matter. We have not taken up arms against the Emperor. Perished thought. We would never do such a thing.
It's a very good thing I'm not the one talking.
He smiles. "No, I much prefer the plain speak of an officer. Officers tend to get to the point," he says. "They often understand what's actually going on in a way that they pretend they don't. Even a man like yourself, your father, he's somewhat of the politician, but still an officer. Do you like hawking like he does?"
Not really.
"Shame. I quite like hawking. Quite like hawking." "I shall not invite you then," he says.
Shame.
Smiles. "As I say, much prefer the simpler talk of the officers." Says, "Good day to you." Makes
Yeah.
his way over towards the large tent.
Duck back inside and relay.
On the outside, you can see a banner being hoisted up above that tent.
That's Lord Trot here. He seems pretty eager to talk.
Is he who we were hoping to speak to?
No.
I thought not.
Claws on the outside, scrapes, movement, and then the hissing and it's more demogryphs. Screeching
They like
of
them, don't
demogryphs.
they? Here, these demo whatsits.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them in the Trot's army. Indeed, their family crest is a demogryph.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Well, at least no. Trot's Marauders.
Mm.
Although they have lots of different crests for each one of the different units, but yes. As someone else has arrived. Are you poking out again?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't help himself. Again, unmistakable. Another Trot. This one's Absalom. And he rides a monster. Makes the large one that was being ridden by Shalgree look small. He himself is actually, now that he's got off, shorter than you imagined. You'd heard about him. You'd heard about him a number of times, and he's apparently a monster. But he's not as tall as you expected. You were expecting someone truly enormous. He is, however, really big. And he, from here, looks significantly older than who you know to be his father. His face is worn, scarred, and it has clearly been under the elements a lot. As he comes down, again, bald head, chunky. As he's looking left and right, looks over the tent, looks over at you. And there's a smile. As he then looks over towards the tent, then says, fuck off! Makes his way heavily over towards the tent. Father! He calls. And from inside you hear, do keep it quiet, son.
Carl will duck his head back in tent as Absalom here.
We thought I heard something.
I think we all have.
Yeah.
And from inside you hear, what the fuck's she doing here?
Do I know who any of these people are?
You're aware of them,
Yeah.
there's your sense.
Yeah, so like if he says Absalom, I know who that is. Yeah,
You've done your homework.
yeah.
Yep.
Just
You know who's
checking.
involved with these.
And do I know that Zenokar is an Imperial hero?
You didn't, but now you do. Or no, you
Well, he
won't
hasn't
when you
told
see it.
me
No,
yet.
Well, yeah,
yeah,
he wouldn't have relayed.
Yeah,
what
but
he's
that's
wearing.
probably going to mean something.
Yes, of course, it
yeah,
means
yeah,
something.
yeah.
He's been decorated.
Yeah.
His deeds have been recognised and have been lauded by his peers. As it all falls silent over there at the other main tent. Looks like they're gathering. As you hear yet more hooves this time arriving. You have spying again.
Yeah,
Out he goes. Who's this?
must be young.
Huh.
Kid.
It's not. The Sapona teams of Bergenhafen. They are not allies of the Trots that you're aware of, or indeed the Jungfreuds. But that's most certainly the heraldry of the Sapona teams.
Seeing the heraldry, he will go right back in to Niemand. Do you have any idea why there's Sapona teams are here?
Bergenhafen.
Oh, well, that's important trade town. Very important. I would imagine that they're here to protest just like I am. I mean, list all the trades that we do in Bergenhafen.
While
And
he's
down the
listing all
river
that,
of the Bergen. And
and he would like, is there like a political reason he can think why they'd be here if they weren't allied?
No, it seems altogether too likely that they have been brought underneath the sway.
Yeah, but it's a quiet alliance that hasn't
Yeah.
been shouted yet.
Yeah. And more hooves. And more coming from two different directions this time.
We've got
One
quite,
second.
we've got quite the cast.
In comes the Houseborn. That's one of the Vorbigland houses. And over there, coming in by, again, also Horse, House Falconhane. That's another two Vorbigland lords.
Known previously as allies?
No.
presumably they all are prime estates who
Yes.
voted
They are all prime
in
estates.
favour.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think it's better if you just come out and have a look.
I'm quite
Right.
enjoying this tour,
I
bro.
think
It's
you're right.
lovely.
Just easier on my legs.
Right. Goes out.
As you come out, and coming along is another small group. This one's a small delegation holding up another banner. The banner this time of Ostervorbigland. You don't even know which house that is. You don't know Ostervorb. There's at least 60 or so prime estates of Reichland. You've not memorized them all. You'd like to think that you had. but you haven't. There's you
Well,
would
he's
presume
probably more familiar with many of the houses of other places because that's
Definitely
who's often
south.
negotiating
Yes,
with,
indeed.
like rather than.
Ostervorbergland. And then this one is potentially explosive. Helmgard.
What?
Oh.
Helmgard. The banner of House Mackinson. House Mackinson are led by a childhood friend of the Emperor. They hold the border in Axbite Pass between
Very-
Britonia
Very important trade
and the
route,
Empire.
right?
It could not be a more
Right, well,
important
as soon
trade
as
route
he's, Mackinson of Elmgart, very important trade. I told you, all the traders are coming. They understand how important this
And
is. If
it's
trade doesn't flow,
Mackinson himself, who drops down, looks over, sees
Mackinson.
you, recognizes you, and comes over and goes, "Ah, so he sent you, did he? Well, hopefully we'll be done with this rather quickly then." He says, "How was the distasteful business in the south? Did you resolve it?"
And it's all resolved.
Of course
Peacefully.
you did. He says, "And might I ask which party felt that they were most slighted?"
Neither. All parties were.
Slighted, I understand. He says, "I understand how you work, Neiman. Everyone feels like they'd had their pockets filched." He says,
But only to an acceptable degree.
"Yes, you can put my banner up." He says,
I have to say, there are more parties going to be present at this discussion than I was expecting.
"Oh, we've been expecting this. There's a claim that I voted in the Volkshalle to remove the Jungfreuds. I wasn't there. The vote was lodged in my name. By me. The Emperor has some questions that need answered. And I do not approve of the current situation. I am here to observe." Helmgard, he says, is here to observe as he walks in.
Sounds like dishonourable business. People putting things in people's names when they're not there.
But this is a normal thing where they have proxy voters in there.
Yeah, proxy voters are normal, but he said it was put in his name as
by
him.
him.
No,
Yeah.
as him.
Yeah. Proxy voters are very common.
Mm.
As he makes his way off. Coming from, this time, the south side, a delegation. Chap at the front of that with a small beard, dark hair combed down to one side mostly. He looks like he's in his early 50s. And the banner that sits behind that is arguably one of the most important banners of all Reichland. House Hallskrug. You're currently in the lands of House Hallskrug. You've just transgressed into them. So he's the local lord who's apparently hosting this.
They're
The one
very,
with it?
very good traders, right?
But shoddy signs. So.
But it means they're good traders because they're constantly buying materials.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
that's the reason
So-
humans can make signs out of wood, so that you can keep selling them more wood.
Now you know Lightmund. Lightmund is someone that you have been friendly with. To the benefit of Stirland, of course. As far as you're concerned, he represents one thing. Information. One of the most well-informed men in the Empire. You're quite convinced he's the Imperial Spy Master.
Lightmund.
Lightmund Hallskrug. As he comes in, looks over at the main tent, looks over to where you are, frowns slightly upon seeing the Magister, smiles to himself, sees you, gets off his horse and says something back to them, comes over. "Well, I didn't expect to see you here, but of course you're here, because you're everywhere, aren't you?
I don't know what you mean, but
You know exactly what I mean."
it's lovely to see you.
So
too.
Stirland has decided to come to this meeting. Well, that's going to put the cat, he says, amongst the griffins.
I'm merely here to observe, nothing more.
Don't get eaten by the griffins.
I'll do my level best.
This is Reichland business. Do you understand? Reichland business. It has nothing to do with you, and it certainly has nothing to do with your shithead Stir Marshal.
I love it when you're angry.
I'm not angry, he says.
So you
The
say.
man is a murderer. We've already tried to pull him up before court more than once. Your little boy elect account, we don't expect to last until he's 18 because you are no better than him.
I have no idea what you mean.
If Sterling falls underneath your rule within the next 3 years, I will be sorely disappointed. Reichland's court will not stand for it. He says, and I'm happy to say that publicly, as he looks around you all. Happy to say it publicly. Look forward to seeing you in there. Lord Magister, always charmed, he says. Watch for this one. She's the worst politician here. Walks off. The worst. She does not have Reichland's interest in mind. And then walks off. Completely misses you.
Rude.
Turns round. I'm sorry. I haven't been introduced.
Gledrieka, Clan Brintock, representing Carberg, Ziflin. Our families do business.
He
But
says,
here, I represent the thoughts of the Eye King.
and he smiles. Well, and you'll be suing for peace, won't you?
Oh, absolutely, because you know as well as I do, our families have traded
He
for
puts his finger up. Says, as Royal Ambassador for the Court of Reichland, he says, I understand your concerns. He says, and I share them. My core reason for being here is to bring peace to this unfortunate matter. He says, however, peace may not be as easy to secure as we would prefer, which is why, of course, talk is an important component of ensuring that all parties feel like they have been fairly treated. As it stands, there are parties who feel they have been wrong, and as is often the case for humanity, they often turn to their weapon before they turn to talk.
Aye.
And that is what this is, an example of humanity doing what humans do. I fully understand and recognize your position. I shall make sure it's made clear to them before you even arrive.
Right.
And he bows deeply. He says, however, today I will not be speaking on behalf of Reichland. I am here as the Duke of Holzkrug. These are my lands, and I'm here to make sure that everything is conducted with civility.
Right, I understand.
He says, and one more time, bows his head. Your Magister, Captain, you.
Lightmans?
So he goes.
They're making a real statement here. No, like, seriously, like, the amount of allies that are coming out of the woodwork.
Well, are they allies though? I mean,
Yes, they're not necessarily allies. They perhaps share the reservations that led to the rebellion in the first place. That doesn't mean that they're allied in this particular war necessarily. It does undoubtedly complicate matters, however. If nothing else, the one problem we will have is dozens of competing voices. It's very hard to reach consensus the more people that talk at once.
A small party making its way over towards this now much larger party. Some tents are being pitched up as other groups are now beginning to pitch out their own areas. More flags have gone up outside the tent to show who has arrived. And this one is bearing no banners at all. At the front, there's a dark-haired man, but silver in his hair. Behind him, an elf with white hair. Behind him, on a pony, a dwarf. As they come in.
who the fuck are these?
Business have an elf, a dwarf, and a man in the Riddermark.
Is this a joke?
They all went
A
into
human,
bar.
an elf, and a dwarf walked into the embassy.
I tell you, what you doing with that Elgie? Can't contain oneself.
He hops off, looks round, looks over to where you lot are, sees you. A smile hits his face upon seeing you. Points back to the elf, points over towards where you are. She turns her pale face over towards you, looks over, nods once, and he nods and just walks straight over to the tent where a guard challenges. And he goes, oh, I don't have time for this. I'm here representing the Countess of Nuln. He says, here is my scroll case. He says,
Do I recognise this
nope, never
individual?
seen this man in your life.
Interesting.
As there's a pop. I'll have you announced. Says, Simrith!
Representing Nuln, you say? Well, my trade has been interrupted down to Nuln, so I hope you'll be here speaking
Right,
on
over
behalf
to you,
of peace.
Oh, we haven't met.
Oh, right.
Looks down at you. You are one of the finest examples I've met. You must be from Carrick Ziflin. The blood runs strong in Carrick Ziflin. He says, it runs strong and old. You must be Clanbrintic. He says, oh, yes, Clanbrintic. He says, I am honoured to meet you, your ancestor. He says, your ancestor.
What the fuck's happening
Galeka.
here?
Is she
Galeka
blushing?
of House Brintock. Oh,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she established the first trade route down into the Empire. She was deeply suspicious of them, and it took 200 years for it to be properly put into place. But she refused to die until it was finished. And on the day that it was signed, she went down and died, having done her business at the grand age of 402. As it says, her name echoes down through history for the great work that she did.
Right, well, how long
Yes.
did it take her to set up that trade agreement if you know so much about it?
He says, well, according to your records, I would presume some 200 years. But according to the Empire, a mere 10. But they didn't quite understand the full depth of the work that she put into it. And of course, he says, the assessment of character. He says, puts out his hand. Well, we shake hands. He
Right.
says, his hand is warm. Oh, it's nice. Oh, no, it's not.
What the fuck's happening?
Is her hand not just like
Yeah.
apps?
Your hand is a giant ham in comparison to his much smaller one as he wraps it around. And then
But she's caught feelings.
then slips it away with a slight touch at the end and says, we'll see each other inside. He says,
Right.
and bows once. I'll let the heralds do their job later. Looks over. You old dog, what are you doing here?
I'm here to secure peace, of course.
Yes, of course you are. Let's find out what you're really here to do. He says, up ahead, the white-haired elf whispers something at him. He looks back, looks over at you, says something, and the pair of them go in. The dwarf moves up, stands outside the guards, and then just backs into one of them and pushes him into the tent as he's like, and then just stops. As the guard says, excuse me, so he goes, you're excused. The other one goes, I wouldn't bother. So he goes off to the other side and stands beside him. Yet more galloping hooves.
It sounds like Nuln really knows what's right and proper in the world.
Blue banners fluttering. Marienburg. House van de Kuiper. One of the richest families in the old world.
Claps.
Their steeds are all barded and detailed with waves. As they come in, and from the top, one gentleman gets down with a chin under his chin. His hair hanging down from a central parting. Big beard. As he goes, hope I'm not too late. He says, we're representing Van de Kuiper, fellows. He says, you'll be that naming fellow. I says, good. He says, you're not coming in. You're not being called yet.
We've not been called yet.
Oh, don't worry. I'll see you all sorted. And you hear, yes, you will. From a pale, thin man at the side. Oh, don't you worry. They make some hand signals and they all peel off and they set up camp about 100 meters away, much lower off in the distance. Here's my papers. I'm representing Vesterland. He
It's a
says,
bold statement.
Shots fired.
How big is this tent?
it's a big tent. As I first introduced it, a large tent. You're in a
Yeah.
smaller one, and it's also
when
pretty
you said
big.
There's a large
tent, I'm
tent.
like,
This is a fucking marquee.
Yeah.
Right?
The dwarf
Circus tent.
the dwarf does
size.
this. And he goes, oh, there you go. As the guard goes, excuse me. You're excused. And it looks at him. Oh. No, this is proper made. Says, this treaty's over 300 years old. Elba Aus van de Kuiper. Oh, you're here representing all blood, you are. Oh, I like that. He says, so are you the cat or are you the griffin? I'm the fucking griffin. As he makes his way in, holding it as the guard goes, he's fine.
What they're
And it all
talking about,
falls
cats and
quiet.
griffin.
No.
Common phrase, cat amongst the pigeons, except it's often said in Reichling, cat amongst the griffins, because the people who are stirring up the stuff tend to get eaten. Pretty much the opposite of the cat amongst the pigeons, the cat amongst the griffin. Thinks it's the big boy about town, crump, crump, crump.
Right. So he's saying he's the big man.
One of them.
Saying he's the big man.
Yeah.
I think
Why didn't
everybody
he
here
just
thinks
say
they're the
Small
big man.
column
Several
of
big
horsemen.
mans.
And fluttering the raised stag
Lotman's
of House Jungfreud.
Here's
And the banner,
the main man.
the bridge, the son of Ulricsberg. As they come up. At the top is the Duke himself. As he's making his way over. To either side of him, knights. He looks over, looks at the various banners, a half smile hits his face, sees you, the Grey Wizard, and a slight smile hits his face. Sees you, and immediately gives deference, and then comes down off his horse, comes straight over to you. It has been too long, he says, as he puts out his hand and shakes it. How's business?
Business is interrupted.
I know,
It has to stop.
I agree.
Good.
Says, it is time for us to put an end to this mess. Good, I'm glad you're in support. Turns round and walks off.
Right.
Classic
Oh,
young
he's
Freud.
a good man. He's a good man. I knew his grandfather before him.
As he
They were good men too.
walks over and goes to the dwarf. And they both bow, the two guards on the other side. The dwarf looks at him. And he makes his way into the tent. The hubbub of noise comes from within, spills out. They're obviously all talking, discussing things. And you are still on the outside. This is getting rude. But then, dwarves can be patient.
Yeah, totally. This isn't that long.
Do you know anything about that dwarf?
Nope.
I know he
He's a
came
dwarf.
in with
But you can judge him in one front.
an Elgate.
Nope.
No.
Well,
You can
actually,
judge him on two fronts. Number one,
Yeah.
he's not showing any of his clan markings.
Embarrassing.
Okay, so he might be an
Dishonourable
imperial
potential.
dwarf, but he's dressed in the appropriate style of someone from one of the Carracks. Although, again, no distinguishing marks. He came with an elf. And importantly, his beard is long.
Oh.
Still holding all of its colour, you would guess he's probably not necessarily one of the long beards of his clan, but his beard is long. So you would guess, looking at him, 105, maybe 106, judging by the length of his beard and by the way he holds it. So he's old. He's not that old, but he's old, and he's in his middle years. No, definitely from one of the Carracks, but clearly deciding not to show. Looking at the style of it, you'd be willing to guess maybe Carrack Norn. In fact, the more you look at it, the more you reckon it's the Hornhold. In fact, the more you look at it, the more you're certain you are. In fact, as you sit and look at him a bit more and judge him up and down, judging by the way he's squaring his shoulders and look at his nose as he's shifted from the side, proud. It's got a definite bump. Galtok, Clan Galtok, almost certainly Clan Galtok. You remember the matriarch of that particular line, they all carry her nose. They all have her nose. Clan Galtok from Carrack Norn. But you know nothing about him.
and has he just been totally oblivious to another
Absolutely
dwarf?
oblivious.
Probably. I would say Clan Galtok from Carrick Known. His nose is chiselled for his grandmother. It's no doubt.
And then an unexpected visitor.
More unexpected than everybody else.
Yes.
Wow.
A single rider in purple with a long scythe. Bald head, hood pulled back.
This is your area.
We stagger from
Patriarch.
Wittgenstein, we're running.
Patriarch of the Amethyst Order.
Oh.
Wow.
His steed is thin and white. As he comes in,
And behold, I held a writer.
Yeah.
his face almost white.
What's his name again?
Vigo Hexenson.
Vigo.
We evade the bird of Vigo.
Vigio.
As he comes in and drops down carefully from his steed. A large book, his grimoire, sorry, Ralph, sits at his hip as he positions his scythe slightly and then uses it more like a walking stick with the blade pointing backwards as he makes his way up, passing you, nods once in your direction, and makes his way over. The guards pull away the dwarf. Pulls away also as he pushes his way through. You didn't realise quite how tall he was until he passed by the other two. Now, Niemand is a very tall man, he's about 6'4". Hexenson towered over the other two.
Another 1.5 foot with a hat. But
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
As he passes
Is Ludenhoff
through.
the captain?
Pardon?
Is the captain tall?
Is he tall? Not that tall, he's about 6 foot. So he's tall, but he's not that
He's
tall.
a giant.
He's a giant.
He's certainly tall by some considerations. As he
Three
makes
quarters
his
of a
way
birdie.
in. Tent closes. There's no hubbub inside the tent this time.
Well, you hope you've got a really good speech planned, Grand Magister. It's going to take it.
No, Lord Magister.
Oh,
But why would the Grand Magister send him?
So,
the
I-
patriarch.
each of the orders are entirely independent.
Yeah.
The Supreme Patriarch can call upon the patriarchs in a variety of situations. Indeed, there's councils of patriarchs you're aware of. Gods, you're aware also that they called upon you to be Patriarch of the Grey Order, and you did everything in your power to ensure that would never, ever, ever happen.
That's all right-thinking Grey Magisters do.
Exactly. The idea of sitting through political meeting after political meeting in Altdorf, never moving, makes you feel physically sick.
The idea of staying in one place.
Yeah, quite.
Oh,
I thought, don't the Greys do the we're all Grand Magister thing?
I don't know what you were talking
Pretty sure.
Patriarch.
Yeah. Sorry, Patriarch.
So he could be here by himself, he could be here, but there is, as far as you're aware, no elector count that would summon him here.
Yeah, he's got no affiliations or ties.
No. Now the elector counts can summon the patriarchs, and when different ones summon, the patriarch then makes choices according to the articles of magic. Ultimately, the emperor, if the empire itself is declaring war, gets top say. And if you're already sworn to a different patriarch, then those magisters go off and do whatever it is with them. Civil issues should never arise.
Looks like a good gathering
quite the party.
to listen to sense.
Don't get your hopes up.
Bit worrying, but we have the best here.
No pressure.
Another small party. Coming up by horse this time.
They're going to need a bigger tent.
4 figures this time, none of which are holding banners, none of which are standing out like giant wizards with their crazy uniforms, or pale riding.
We ain't seen anybody religious yet.
The front of them is a very lean-looking man with a sword sitting on his back, the cross of which can be seen sitting over his shoulder. Behind him is a far broader, stockier fellow with a big beard that's kind of ginger. As they are making their way up, 2 other knights behind them. As they look around, look over towards the tent, move off, corral their horses over towards the side, and then he comes round and you can quite clearly, hear him at the tent flap going, Johann von Mecklenburg, he says, representing the true rulership of Sudenland. He says, long may the sun rise. Awkward. And you hear, oh, my lord, as the dwarf goes, fuck. And literally turns away and goes, oh, and just walks into the tent. As the other guard goes, doesn't want to walk in front of this person. Have you been invited? Yes. Right, well, I'll just nudge you. Goes in, comes out. You can come in. I know. Looks around, looks over where you are, looks to other places as well. There's loads of people gathering on the outside now. You're just one of many now. As he goes in. The beardy fellow comes up afterwards. I'm with him. Bodyguard. Goes in as well. And it all falls quiet. The camp is now quite full. Banners raised all over the place. Now, in terms of Reichland, a small fraction of its leadership is here. A tiny fraction indeed. Of these 60 plus prime estates, there's only 4 or 5 actually represented here. And you count as representing the Prince of Waldorf. Huh. Marvellous. But it's not the meeting you were expecting. Especially since you're the one that was originally, as far as you were concerned, sending the delegation and embassy. What have you stumbled in upon? The answer will be found out after our break. But before we start that, how is that poll going? Can anybody see it out there? Because we were doing a poll.
It finished in a tie, I believe.
What's the tie between?
Naimand and Ariana.
Naimand and
Arana, yeah.
So a tie.
Would you like to do a second poll next time so people
So
can
we're going to do a second poll during the break. Okay, so we can do a second poll between those two during the break. That'd be perfect because I would like to have an answer before we start the next session. So that being the case, let's move to break.
Hi, I'm Andy. You've just been watching me playing LAWhammer. Hopefully you're enjoying what we're doing, and you might want to go check out our Patreon where you can see all of the special rules that Andy Law has written for this, as well as all the maps, the careers, and everything that he's done. You may even want to fling a little money our way, which we can spend on lights, cameras, mics, or we can just blow it all on hats. You may want to visit our friendly Discord community as well, where people chat about the episodes and come up with their various theories and conspiracies and so on. So any support you can give us, that'd be great. But whatever you do, like, subscribe, and smash the bell for notifications.
The tent looked, in comparison to its full square footage, relatively empty because everyone had gathered around the central table. And most of them were not given access to their various bodyguards. One each, perhaps, and that was about it. It meant that the table itself had an interesting mix of folk, some of whom were there because they wished to be, some of whom have got their own delegates here, others of whom have decided they might not even want to sit down, having already spoken to whom they wanted to speak to when they first arrived. And then, of course, there's yourselves. At the head of one side of the table is the Duke. Let's go with Blackrock. The Duke of Ulricsberg by his own self-proclamation. And sitting opposite him, on the other far side, is Leitman Halskrug. the Duke of Hallskrug, whose land you're currently in, who is also the ambassador for all Reichland, handles all of the diplomatic matters for Reichland. And down either side is a group of other people. The good Lord Magister of the Grey Order. He's sitting almost in the middle, almost like the balanced scales of justice itself. His long beard sitting just underneath the table as he looks around him. To one side is the representative of Clan Brintock. She's sitting in her chair. She has a stein in front of her, which is currently frothing up with a small amount of spilt ale, and a large pitcher of ale sitting in front of her too. Along the table is a variety of bottles of wine, beer, spirits down the far end where Ubersreich / Black Rock sits. And then we have a mixture of others. Your good self sitting opposite where he is, representing who knows what, but you claim it's the Imperial Court.
I am representing the Imperial Court. And
I think that's what I just
resemble
said.
that remark.
Was that a claim? Yes, it was. And indeed, you're claiming it right there over on the opposite side. Sitting behind you, standing, is the captain of the North.
Sitting and standing.
Well, lying behind you.
He's got a chair on a platform.
Using
Like a lifeguard.
He's kneeling on a chair.
A metaphorical than literal standing. So, sitting behind you, standing.
He's just alternating every so often.
Big squats.
I mean, it's important to stay fit when you're guarding someone. And then there are the others. We have quite a number of others here, representing several of the prime estates, for example. We've got a woman over on that side who has represented herself as, well, this is not expected at all, Agatha Bourne of House Bourne. She's in her 70s, and she is the Law Lord of the Empire and the Law Lord of Reichland, and also a High Priestess of Verena. She is, however, relatively unassuming, relatively mousy looking, with her hair pulled back as she's looking somewhat hesitantly around the table. But she is here representing, of all things, House Bourne. Not the Reichland, not Verena, not all of the Empire, just the house that her sister, her elder sister, rules.
See, not the only one.
Ostervorbergland is here. Ostervorbergland is sitting down beside. His name is apparently Gregor, the Duke of Ostervorbergland. He is a folded arm chap who looks relatively unhappy. Falkenhayn, he's here, the Duke of Falkenhayn. He's got a hawk-like nose, his hair pulled back, caught up in a single braid, and the rest of it just hanging loose. He is looking alert. A slight moustache sitting out to either side as he looks around. Obviously, the Thames. House Trot. He is sitting, somewhat lounging, sitting right beside Ubersreich.
Has
Sorry,
he taken his
Blackrock.
armor off?
Pardon?
Has he taken
Nope,
his
he's still in his
armor?
armor. And he's just sitting there looking down the table, occasionally scratching at his face. Behind him is the monster that is his son. His daughter isn't anywhere to be seen. As he looks down the line and occasionally leans over and whispers something into the ear of Black Rock, Ubersreich, depending upon how you want to take it. Depending upon clearly what's being said. They don't appear to be jocular, nor do they appear to be stage extras at the back doing the chorus lines. Sitting beside you on one side is the representative of Nuln. His hair is hanging loose, and he got introduced as Herr Motz of Nuln. Behind him is the elf. Tall, thin, white-haired, around about 6'9". Her eyes are a very pale grey, almost to white, with no pupil or iris or anything, just pale grey to white, as she looks down like a white statue, regarding everything from behind him. He is sitting forward as if something exciting is about to happen. He looks almost the exact opposite of, say, Viggo Hexenson, the patriarch of the Amethyst Order, who is just sitting like that, not moving, barely blinking.
Is he breathing?
You're not convinced he is. You're also not convinced he isn't,
Amethysts.
but you're not convinced he is.
What's he done with his scythe?
It's leaning over against one of the main tent poles over there. As he then, just as everyone thinks he's never moving, looks down the table a bit and looks back and then just looks to fixed forward. Halskrug is not far away from him. As he looks down the length of the table and takes in to his left-hand side the large figure of the Marienburg representative. They've clearly hired someone local to represent them. He's just looking down the line, totting them up, nodding occasionally, rubs his hands together, quite keen to get to grips with whatever is about to happen. Sitting right beside Halskrug on the same side is Helmgard, the Margrave of House Mackinson, as he just rubs at his chin as he looks at it all. Margrave's in his 30s, thick hair hanging down onto his shoulders, relatively prominent nose. And he looks pretty uncomfortable with all of this. He doesn't look like he's in his happy place, that much is certain. But he did make a pretty strong statement earlier. It is a lot of pretty important people all gathered around and is clearly a meeting that had already been organized. The fact that you've stumbled in upon it seems almost too coincidental to be true. You were clearly sent to stumble in upon it, or you were clearly sent to stumble in upon it, given that you are the one who's heading the embassy. This is not what was expected at all. Halskrug stands up, looks down either end, and says, "Welcome," he says, "to what I hope will be a fruitful discussion about the current issues that face us all concerning the unfortunate circumstances in Ulricsberg. Now, for all there have been movements of troops, and for all there have been the rattling of sabers, shields, this is all that really matters. Getting around the table, talking things out. Fortunately, we have been joined," he says, "by Lord Magister Niemand, who is representing the Prince of Altdorf in these affairs, which hopefully should allow us to conclude this relatively swiftly. Now, I understand that several of you have issues that you wish to present, and several of you have some problems that you would like to air. However, given that we do have a representative of the Prince, it seems only right and fair that the Prince states the Prince's position." I'm going to go over towards you.
My responsibility here is to bring about peace. That's what the Prince wants. I understand that there are grievances that people feel, and that they will no doubt be aired today, and some may be resolved and some
Uber's right, says, "I sent an embassy to the Emperor and he killed him in front of my..." You said you would let him speak. "My son was sent to the Prince, and the Prince had him murdered in front of his army, in front of the embassy that I sent. Why should we not do the same to this one?" "Are you going to let him finish?" says Halskrug. "Proceed."
Thank you, my Lord Duke. I'll keep things short, as understandably tempers are frayed. It is the prince's position that peace is what is most desired. Indeed, our kind host, and point towards Ulricsberg, our kind host said something which I thought was insightful and speaks directly to the heart of the matter. This is Reichland business. And yet,
as you say that, a couple of heads turn around to look at the invading Sturlander, who has somehow inveigled her way into this meeting that apparently none of them can quite fathom, but here she is.
None of them are fussed about the guy from Null or
Nope.
Mecklenburg.
No.
Or
Because they're,
Sutherland.
fuck me, this is
Smash the
bullshit.
patriarchy!
This is misogynistic bullshit.
Hey, there was one other woman somewhere.
Yeah, I just sit looking bland and pretty.
I mean,
my big
you're very much not my target, but
That's absolutely fine.
this is Reichland business, and yet, Carberg is very much not in Reichland. And it would seem to me that grievances, which may be legitimate, I'm not here to cast judgment on that, but grievances within Reichland should be settled in the Reichland Diet, not on the field of battle, and not on the blood-stained ground of Middenland. That is my position, that is my goal, is to avoid bloodshed and to bring about peace.
As Holzgren nods. Do you have something you want to say? Black Rock? He says. Yep, I do. As he pulls up a scabbarded blade. This is Draktuki. The Runefang of Midland.
Would I be able to recognise such a thing?
It's definitely a rune blade.
Yeah.
It says, upon hearing that my son was murdered by the dishonorable dogs that claim to be representatives of the Emperor, the Elector Count of Middenheim and the Elector Count of Middenland and the Elector Count, he says, of Ostland have all agreed that I have a legitimate grievance, which is why I summoned, and he smiles, the Patriarch of the Amethyst Order, who is now in my employ. For I have been given the right to speak on Bildhafen's position. And he did indeed pronounce it wrong. That wasn't just me making an error. As he puts the blade, he entrusted me with his blade. He said, he was so horrified at the actions of the Altdorf troops. Horrified. Now, we were there as a delegation. We were there to discuss the difficulties that we had faced in Reichland and were granted access to his lands. Our forces moved up to Carberg as guests of His Royal Majesty. And Altdorf attacked the sovereign soil of Vinland. Now, my good friend, the Duke, and he smiles, of Saponatine. It turns out that he and the Elector Count are very close. Very close indeed. Indeed, they had been recently hosting them at games in Bergenhafen. He happened to be in the city when we were there. Introductions were made. And as this occurred, and we were discussing matters, the news arrived that my son had been slain by the Reichsmarshal in single combat, representing the Emperor, not the Prince of Altdorf. He claimed he was speaking on behalf of the Emperor, which means the Emperor slew my son, which means the Emperor is now part of this disagreement. Not the Prince of Altdorf or the Prince of Reichland, but the Emperor. He invaded Middenland. He slew my son, and I have a grievance. And the court in Altdorf will not hear me. I have made an official petition to be heard, but they have refused it, which means we must go back to the old method of dealing with these things. Pressure. Hexenson raises a hand. Oh, Petra? He says, that's Hexenson. Leans up and says, the colleges are aware of what has occurred. We were to keep ourselves separate from it until the elect accounts themselves have called from both sides. Contracts are being drawn across the empire as I speak. I am very sorry to say, Lord Magister, there are more parties involved here than sit at the table. There will be no peace, for Ostland has declared war. There's... Oh, everyone around the table's like, oh, an actual declaration. As Helmgard. What do you mean Ostland has declared? Tasnik? No, he would not declare war. I mean, his son's in the Grey Mountains. That would be foolish of him. What is he even thinking? Against whom? He says,
Like, does he not live near the Grey Mountains?
Yeah.
It's like, shit, maybe it's me.
and the reply is, he has declared war against the Empire itself. What do you mean? We are all the Empire. What do you mean he's declared war against the Empire? I mean, no, what? I have said what I have said. His hand goes down. What do you mean? As Holzkrug goes, is that true? And he nods once. It is moving very quickly. Very quickly. Half my order is already on contract. He says, the rest are not because they cannot be found. Purposefully? Of course. He says. Holzkrug then goes, well, then we have a different meeting ahead of us. This is not a meeting about what do we do pressing forward. The meeting is about what do we do about Ostland.
Well, that's not why I came here. Well, this is going to interfere with trade. Right, this is going to interfere with trade in Ostland, in Talabekland, in Kislev. We might even...
Yeah, off she goes.
The Iron King has let his thoughts be known that squabbling amongst yourselves is going to bring this empire to rack and ruin.
Holzkrug goes, that may be the case, but we can't control Ostland. We can't control Ostland. That would require Tassening to be at this table. And if he's declared war against the Empire, then what, is he separating himself from the rest of it? Exactly how can he even... That makes no sense. You are responding to this. You must make sense of it, Hexenson. He says, I have received the orders. It is specifically against the Emperor and all that he represents. Which officially is the Empire? Excuse me. May I employ you, Agatha? She looks up. No, you can't. She says, I'm representing Bourne right now. She says, however, I'm happy to answer matters in legal, if necessary. She says, I mean, if anyone has any questions.
Hands going up.
Going down. And she says, settle, please. Halsgrove goes, it all quiets down. Then Halsgrove says, if you could explain exactly what the legal matters are here so that we can understand it and how to make our best decisions moving forward, including for yourself, representing Bourne. It's exceedingly complicated, he says. Reichland has got its own constitution, which is going to not to be activated. The Empire has its own constitution, which we put in place by Magnus. That will be activated. If he's declaring war against the Emperor, then it comes to a matter of the elect accounts, which means that he is siding himself against the Emperor. So the elect accounts themselves will need to make decisions as to where they stand. If they all stand against him, then, well, this isn't supposed to happen. Well, it's nothing about supposed. What's our legal way through this? It says, there isn't one. He's an elect account. He can do what he wants. He is an elect account. But one would presume he wouldn't, because the rest of the elect accounts would move against him. It's the Empire. Helmgart says, we don't need a time of bloody 2 emperors again. I mean, does he want to be emperor? Hexus shakes his head. No. Just remove him. Replace him with someone else. The conflict would probably come to an end if he stepped down. Several turn to you. Will he? Halsgrove looks at the person. Yeah, you know he won't.
I find that unlikely.
See, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's true, so him representing the Emperor slew someone who was there under the embassy, like under a peaceful. That's bad, right?
That's bad.
Like dishonourable. Well, I think it's clear he's going to have to step down. He won't have the support of the High King any longer if it's true that he went against a peaceful embassy and slew a diplomat like that. And I can tell you now that the High King, and therefore in this case me, sits on a pile of gold that's bigger than Altdorf its bloody self. I represent 3 warrior clans and we would go to war over that. I can understand why this man's not willing. I can't even believe he's come to the table. It speaks so highly of the honour of this Duke that he's even at this table. If your Emperor's done such a thing, you should be ashamed to be representing him. Your ancestors would be ashamed. I'm ashamed. On your behalf.
It's also fair to say that the fact that someone was willing to give a rune blade to show that he trusted the other is, as far as you're concerned, such a strong sense of trust. Yeah.
He has a rune blade in his hands that's been given to him by another bearer of a rune blade. What more do you need to know? Well, I can tell you what more you need to know. His ancestors are Dovwanga. You understand me? You understand what that means, all of you?
Halsgrove nods. Yes, we do. Dovwanga. Dovwanga is dwarf friend. To be sweared as Dovwanga is an important thing. You have to do something pretty big. Sigmar. He was. Half the people here claim to be descended from Sigmar. None of them are mentioning that, though. None of them are going to say that.
In terms of like Neiman's understanding of what went down
Yes.
with Kurt Helborg.
He has no idea.
Right, okay.
Literally none.
Yeah.
This is news to him also.
But
It's
but
not
also,
news to him because Helborg said, I had to kill the boy, so
yeah,
he knows
he knows he had to kill
him.
him. But the idea that they were under a banner of peace, like
Yeah.
that's
new.
news.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did Jungfreud himself not say it was a duel?
Yeah.
Did he not?
Single
So-
combat.
Single
yeah.
combat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not killing.
Yeah. And also, though, had the Jungfreuds not already besieged Carberg at that point?
That is what you were led to believe, yes.
But what the Duke said was that they weren't besieging; they were invited in.
Yeah.
Thus spoketh the conqueror.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
quite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
History is written by, etc.
Well, all I could say to that is, firstly, I was not present and didn't witness these events firsthand, nor indeed did yourself. Secondly, my understanding was not necessarily that the forces were invited in, but rather were besieged. And certainly the young man whose death I absolutely lament and regret was not murdered, but slain in single combat in the duel. Now, the circumstances around that, I was unaware of it being under any embassy of peace. That is not the circumstances as were informed to me. And if that was the case, well, then that certainly would be something that needs to be resolved and discussed. And I do not deny that that would be a grievance that required answer. But we are poised on a precipice here. The prince will not step down. And now we have another threat of another elector count. I would suggest that this Reichland concern, which will need to be addressed and will need to be answered, will be answered, but we must present a unified front to prevent the empire falling apart. We must have peace here in order to promote peace there. Otherwise, everything will fall apart. None of us will get what we want. There will be no restoration of honor. There will be no grievances answered. There will be no order. There will be no trade. There will be no prosperity. I understand everyone's anger. I do, sincerely. And just as I witnessed down in the south, people who bear genuine grievances and allow those grievances to be their sole driving purpose can lose sight of their own well-being. And I fear that that is a road that we may stray down if we do not take a moment and try to find a way to come together, to compromise, to find peace now.
Ulricsberg says, peace is obviously something that we would all prefer. We have an issue, obviously, also with Ostland and the supposed transgressions of Reichland into Middenland, one way or another. But apparently, Middenland has accepted Blackrock's position. Blackrock. Yes, I'm the Duke of Blackrock. Let's simply accept that for the moment. He says directly down the table to Ulricsberg. The Emperor, the Prince of Altdorf, the Prince of Reichland, well, probably the Duke of the West March, has done several of us wrong. Well, why don't we start with the simplest point to resolve? What do you think? And he looks down the table towards Mackinson. Well, there is an issue. The issue that I came here to resolve, he says. I've been in the capital for the last 4 weeks. I've been speaking to various people. And it appears that the vote concerning Ulricsberg was done without the support that it claims. Barely scraped through, and I supposedly voted in person. I did not. I was not there. Further, I've spoken to 4 other parties who also claim that their votes were taken without their support. Each of them, though, in slightly different circumstances. In one circumstance, there was an actual bribe. In another one, it was blackmail. In another one, it was a kidnapping. Several significantly dishonorable acts, all of which are enough to bring up a legal challenge for that particular position. Says, now obviously until it goes through the courts, it won't mean anything. And further, if I'm not incorrect on this one, Mother, she goes, no, call me my lady. I'm representing Vaughan. Right, yes, of course, my lady. My lady, assuming I'm not incorrect about this, and assuming you are willing to accept my points in legal matters, if it's an edict, then the challenge would go directly to the Emperor. Yes, it would, who also happens to be the Prince of Reichland, and he would almost certainly support himself. Any disputes that cannot be resolved by the parties will, well, there we go. We have found an unfortunate loophole in Magnus's infallible rules. Now, he's a friend of mine. I tried to speak to him, but he wouldn't let me in. So I find myself here in what feels like a most, well, the term skullduggery comes to mind. It's what it feels like. That we are gathering behind others' backs, but what else is there to be done? And with you, of all people, Weidman, he smiles, my lord. He says, strictly your grace, because I'm representing Helmgart. He says, but nevertheless, there is a clear issue with what happened in Ulricsberg, and then from that has spawned a variety of other situations which should also be addressed. But this instigating point is, as far as I can tell, it was illegally done. I don't know for what reason, but it was done illegally, and we have no legal recourse to. Holzkrug talks over him, meaning it's not actually strictly illegal. The courts will side with the Emperor, so it's not illegal. Let's keep it nice and simple. Let's try not to make it more complicated than it is. It isn't illegal. It isn't palatable. You don't like it, but it isn't illegal, which brings us up to the bigger issue, war. Ostland has declared war against the Emperor. Legally, apparently, that means the entire empire, but I think it's a lot more complicated than that, is I think the case, my lady? She nods one. I did open that it is quite complicated. There are different routes that we can take towards this. Magnus tried to make it impossible for this to occur without someone declaring outright a war. And even then, there is supposed to be support for it. His unique declaration suggests that he probably has support. I would suggest it was probably from Middenheim. Maybe Talbot. He leans back. Is this what the Emperor wants? Says looking at you.
What? War and the Empire falling apart? No.
So how do you claim that this can be pacified? Ostland declaring war after transgressions of territory and an emperor, and Helmgart says, no, stop, your grace. But he says, it's not the emperor that did it. It was the Prince of Reichland. Let's be clear. Ostland has escalated this. Valkenhayn speaks for the first time. Well, this is a pretty mess, isn't it? Your Grace, he says down the table towards Sigismund. I deeply commiserate for your position. I think it's unacceptable. The Emperor is, however, not involved. Whatever Ostland's doing is Ostland's concern. We keep these matters local. I think that the Prince is correct in this regard. He says this is a Reichland matter and it should be dealt with by Reichlanders. So we don't really require outside assistance or observation, pointing over towards yourself. And hopefully we can deal with it as swiftly as possible because there are outside parties who are clearly interested in making sure that this war comes to an end swiftly. That being the case, then all we need to deal with is the Ulricsberg issue. I simply say we just go to the Volkshalle and pass it one more time and return it. You know that won't happen.
Yeah, but if they believe it might happen and it buys us peace for a while. That might be something.
Unacceptable.
No?
No, you can't
Okay.
lie. That's the opposite of the
I'm
Grey
not-
Order.
Yeah, but it's not lying to say, yeah, you can run it through the Volkshalle. They can run it through the Volkshalle. It
But
won't
you know it
pass.
won't pass.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they can't run
Yeah,
it through the
everyone's currently
Volkshalle.
looking at you.
Sorry?
Everyone's currently looking at you.
I mean, you certainly could run it through the Volkshalle. Do we believe it would pass?
Allskrook says, what do you think? Aldorf?
I think it's unlikely. I think
Do you represent the Emperor in this regard, or the Prince of Reichland, or do you represent the Prince of Altdorf?
I represent the Prince of Altdorf. That's right.
And it's the Prince of Reichland who signs in it.
I represent the Prince of Altdorf.
Well, then we don't get an answer. He says, this is Bessie. I'll get that. Falkenhayn says, we don't want to be going to war with each other. Trot speaks up. Fuck this. No, really. Your lords, ladies, gentlemen, graces, whatever you are. He says, we're already at war. We took Carberg. We took Carberg. We took Carberg. He says, we have their bloody blade. They capitulated upon our arrival. We didn't even need to do anything. They simply gave it to us.
It's making eye contact with the door and then looking back.
We arrived, we stated the circumstance as it was, and the Bildhoffens agreed, assuming that we left, which of course we did. We didn't ask for the blade, it was given to us, so that we may muster and call upon, he says, our good friends in the colleges. Bigger. He just looks forward without saying a thing. So what's happening, whether anyone likes it here or not? Says, it's already started. It's happening. I have here a letter, correspondence from my good friend, and he taps the claw on his chest in Middenheim. We campaigned for about 5 years together in Nordland. He's a very close friend. And let me just, he says, and pulls out a pair of spectacles. Let me just. I shall paraphrase. We have a somewhat vernacular communication. I am happy for you to inform anyone that listens that I will go to war, considering everything that has occurred. I'm obviously paraphrasing here. Now you might wonder what that is that he's referring to. Well, he says as he takes off his spectacles. Unlike me, who likes to see. The Middenpalats, 2 days ago, was blown up by Reichland agents. I don't know if it's true or not, but I do know that the Graf thinks that it's true. And that Boris has already said that he will join us. Young Freud leans back slightly in his chair and just looks at everyone.
This is exactly the madness we need to stop. Rumour, gossip.
It's not
innuendo.
rumour. I have it straight from the elect account.
That the elector can't believe something is true that you don't know yourself is true, and
Ah.
he himself does not know is true.
Spoken like a grey wizard. Everything is an extra layer of complication. No, it's simple. He's going to war whether you like it or not. It's happening. We are at war. He says, it's a tragedy, of course. But we must take it upon ourselves to choose a side. As his hand drops down to his blade, and he thrums. Because that's what it's become. Sides. Falkenhayn. And the room goes kind of quiet. Kind of quiet. Falkenhayn goes, Middenheim. Going to war. What about Middenland? Bildhofen likes his son staying alive. He betrayed us, so to ensure he wouldn't betray us again, we're fostering children. Children are a joy for the world, are they not? The next generation, he says, who can harbour a grudge for what comes next. What do you mean he betrayed you? He says, well, he called him Prince of Reichland. When we were at peace, and they orchestrated between themselves to assault us. So, he says, he decided not to do that anymore. Falkenhayn goes, you are a slimy little turd, Trot. You charmer. What's it going to be? How about you, upon a team? Keep me out of this. He says, you're here. You're the one that took us into Carberg. So you're right in the middle of it. Come on, Your Grace. Choose a side. I choose, he says. I choose upon a team. And he looks up towards young Freud. Young Freud looks down. All right, then. It seems that we've reached the position when we need to make some decisions. Ulricsberg, you're next in line after the Ulricsbergs. He just looks at him down the length of the table. So, where do you sit on this? Well, you have a legitimate grievance. Of that, I think we can all agree. Matters have gone far beyond what anyone expected. It appears that what happened in Ulricsberg was barely legal, but any legal challenge will probably fail, which leaves you with a grievance that is unsettled, and you are choosing to settle it with war. It's a nod coming from him. Well, that being the case, go to war. He sits back. Let's see how Reichland answers. It's not an answer, Ulricsberg. I think it's the best answer that I can give given the current circumstances. It says, you're trying to beg for a war with Middenheim included? Middenland included, perhaps? If Middenheim goes to war, you know you'll probably lose half of the north anyway to whatever side he's got. I think that's your side. He says, well, that is dangerous. Now you understand your position. Yeah, I do. He says, I do. A pause. Settles as everyone looks at Ulricsberg going, without actually pulling the face. They're going to be all over my lands. This is going to be the worst. Uh-oh. I'm going to be the battlefield. As finally saying something for the first time, Mr. Motts, Representative Null, goes, well, this is a pretty picture. We have a position in Nuln. He says, Nuln has a position. We invaded Reichland 4 days ago. We invaded Reichland 4 days ago. He says, Dunkelbunk will be ours. He says, oh, sorry, Dunkelberg. It's just I remember Dunkelbunk. He was one of the previous dukes. What a fellow. We've invaded. He says, it's all right, though. We've not invaded Reichland per se. It's Reichland's territory. But we have invaded the Prince of Altdorf's territory. Dunkelberg is ruled by the Prince of Altdorf. He appoints someone to rule on his behalf, of course, much like all of Ulricsberg. We intend to liberate it on behalf of the good Duke, on behalf of your good self. He says, oh, by the way, the Countess says that your sense of style is impeccable. Young Freud simply nods. So, your Ostlander too is a little bit bigger. Just a bit bigger. Also, he says, I'm not entirely sure what you've heard from the south, but we do not have peace in Visenland just now, I'm sorry to say, Lord Majesty of Neiland. We most certainly do not. Indeed, we can also firmly declare with staunch support of what we believe is going to be the unified Visenland held firmly in our hearts. We not only took Faldorf, he says, I would guess a day ago, given what I know, but Etelka Toppenheimer has decided that she doesn't really require her Roomfang anymore. It never was hers anyway. We're not sure what we're going to do with it, but we're going to do something. He says, who knows, perhaps we can declare Sudden Vorbergland as an electoral province. I mean, there's as much right to be a province as Sudenburg, Sudenblug, what do they call it? No, Sudenland, of course. Let's bring back Solland!
As he's doing that, can I have a wee look at what Johann von Mecklenburg is reacting to this?
Johann's sitting pretty clean, not at the table. He's sitting at the back of the tent, just looking on.
Interesting.
Or, he says, there are other options. And he looks over in that direction towards Johann von Mecklenburg. But that would mean that we'd get perhaps one of the finest swordsmen that the Empire has known on our side. Because it's our side at the moment, the part that's moving in to resolve some matters in the south of Reichland that the Prince is incapable of resolving. That's my piece. He says, as he sits back, and then he looks back over at the elf. She nods once. Yep, that's my piece. And he folds his arms. I'll take your questions. Halskrug says, you invaded Dunkelberg, just to make sure we're clear. Null has invaded Dunkelberg. No, we are saving it from a reckless prince. Whatever language you prefer. That is a declaration of war against Reichland. If you must call it that. But then, what would Magnus say? What would Magnus say? If he were to hear that you're saying that we're declaring war against each other as states, he would be horrified. So we prefer not to horrify the greatest of emperors that any of us could have known. We prefer to keep it down. We are simply solving your Prince of Altdorf problem. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. We're solving it. We'll take away all the territory that he took that he shouldn't have taken, including Dunkelberg, which is ours by right anyway. He says, you might have forgotten that, but when Magnus reformed the Empire, initially, Dunkelberg was part of Nuln. But it got taken from us because Magnus liked Altdorf and gave it as a gift to himself in order to run some college of magic nonsense up in the mountains there. He transferred the power over because he was ruling both. We do not accept his position as Prince of Reichland in doing this. So we're taking back what's ours. And then we're going to keep on going up, helping out as we go. I'm sure you won't cause any problems with that at all, Falkenhayn, will you? Oh, I think that would probably be unwise. Excellent. We'll pass through Falkenhayn's lands. We'll liberate Ulricsberg. The problem is resolved. Look at us. Null is saving everyone. As I said, I'll take questions. Folds his arms.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't worry. We're resolving this for you.
Right.
Humans doing human things. He says, as you tend to find, they're short-lived. It won't last more than 2 or 3 years. Your trade will be disrupted minorly, but as you know, there was hundreds of years of trade disruption when they were going through their emperor issues. This is going to be a mere year or two at most. And it's just going to be a bit of kerfuffle in a few specific areas. You can have some letters sent to you as to where not to trade or where not to put your particular caravans. There'll be no primary issue, a few secondary ones, nothing more.
You will guarantee trade routes.
I will guarantee open trade routes as long as the Prince of Reichland does not declare war wider. Or the Prince of Altdorf. He says, oh, I'm declaring war against you. And he smiles. Oh, it's against him. Oh, I should have realised. Halskrug, you should have called me out in that one. He says, I'll admit to being slightly taken aback by how things are moving so swiftly. Oh, no, they've already moved. Keep up. He says, I'm merely just telling everyone what happened days ago. Turns round. Sorry, Altdorf, old boy. Sorry about that, but you're a problem. And at their far end, Ulricsberg nods. Trot says, as he leans forward. I don't think that's going to cause the simplification that you would prefer. He says, Altdorf will get a lot of support from those who would see you repelled. He says, that could be the case, particularly if Falkenhayn sides with Altdorf. Oh, Falkenhayn.
No pressure.
You invite the wolf in.
I really wish I hadn't come now. He says. Trot says, well, you did. Maybe you shouldn't have listened to us. But you didn't like what happened in Altdorf more than anyone else. We just simply need to get rid of him. The prince. It's as simple as that. And reclaiming his lands is only the first step. Removing him is the next one. We band together. We move forward. We take the prince and replace him with his heir. I'm not his heir, says Halskrug quite clearly. I am not. Let's clarify this very clearly. Your Grace, the Halskrugs have not ruled Altdorf for 200 years. He says, 212 years, to be exact. Well, it is time for us to fix it, says Trot. Right some old wrongs. Bring back the Vorbigland if you must. He says, I don't really care, but fix it. Halskrug says, you have your own room fang. Says, I don't care for room fangs. Oh, we all care for room fangs. They're so much fun. He says, look, there's one here. Come on, Halskrug. Come on. Come on. He just looks at him. Halskrug goes. The Prince of Reichland is admittedly a problem. Falkenhayn goes, well, shit. Agatha Bourne says, representing Dawn, he's more than a problem. He has moved forces into my lands without any permission. He has been using my lands as a method of accessing Ulricsberg. He did not request permission. He came in by force. Legally, that is not his right. He did it by force, which is why I came, representing Bourne only. He says, my sister is most displeased. Yes, exactly, says Trot. He's a bother. He's been a bother for a while. We all knew he was going to be weak, but we didn't expect him to be stupid. Weak we like. Weak we like. We can just go about our business. I can be Duke like I should be. But this, says Trot, this is unacceptable. He could take any of our lands, any of us, with these fake votes that he is pushing through. I don't care one little bit about what you say around this table. I will kill him myself if I have to. Nobody takes tame or threatens it, ever! They tried it in the past and my ancestors slew them, and I will slay them in turn! Behind, the son steps back. As he goes, no, it's all right, Absalom. I don't intend to show them my hand. Sorry, I lost my temper. Sorry, Siggy. No, it's quite all right. We've all been angry. Falkenhayn, I know how you feel about this. I don't feel like war, though. Says, it's not about how you feel about war. It's how you feel about this. It's coming to war one way or the other. Fine, I'm with you. Helmgart? I can't go against Karl Franz. I can't. We play midden ball. He says, I mean, I still, when we go down, I'm playing midden ball with Leopold. I can't. I just can't. Agatha Bourne looks down and says, then perhaps you shouldn't talk on behalf of yourself, but on behalf of Helmgart. That is what I'm doing. I'm against this completely. But Bourne is by your side, Your Grace. I'm not. Well, perhaps it's easy for you to do that. I can't do that. How about, says Mr. Mortz, how about we ask Sterland?
She's been listening to all of this. I'm of the opinion I can't speak to legal matters. I know nothing of these things. I'm not the kind of person who's very learned, unlike yourself.
I know nothing. I'm just representing somebody else. I'm bored. Just thoughts.
Same. However, there's law and then there's ethics. And ethically speaking, I find all of this somewhat unnerving. We speak of explosions and assassination attempts, and we think about our great land, the great empire as one, but now nobody's safe. The Graf's not safe if somebody blew his palace up, and I came here to sue for a peace for Carberg, but it sounds like this is part of a much bigger thing. I can't condone this kind of dishonesty.
Is smiling. It's awful, isn't it? Just awful. I mean, I similarly didn't come here to do anything other than, declare war. And I found myself right in the middle of this big mess.
I'm not an elector count.
No, neither am I.
Oh, yeah.
But I do represent one just like you.
I'm angry, and I feel like I've been misled.
So much. The anger in my heart.
The dishonesty.
Yeah. Just when I was last in the capital, I swear, I saw the Emperor himself marching around through town. Wasn't even him. It was a double. He won't even show his face to the people anymore. What's going on in the palace?
I don't recognise him.
This is very much going down into the good prince's lap, and indeed his area of expertise. Grey, shadows, depth, unsurety.
Is this what Magnus would have wanted? Is this the kind of behaviour that he motion?
I can't say I haven't met the man,
I'm
says
asking.
Mr. Mort. But
Raymond.
if I had, he would have probably said something like, "Oh, I don't agree with that sort of thing," he says as he sits back. Holzkrug says, "Don't be flippant." He says, "Oh, I'm sorry, yes, somber moments, war and all of that. Apologies," he says down towards young Freud. Young Freud says, "I've had enough of this, and I agree. I don't want to be a figure of separation for the Empire. That is not the mantle I wish to wear. I've had it forced upon me by Karl Franz. I don't care what title he was using. I don't care what legal claim he had. They have been my lands for longer than he..." Let's be. as blunt as we can, his household is barely even created. I represent a family that has ruled that land since the time of Sigma. He represents a family that was created at the time of Magnus. And his jealousy has driven him into some very dark places. He has no right to the West March. None at all. But his family has claimed it. He has no right to Dunkelberg. But his family have claimed it. It should have returned to Null. When the ruling family of Dunkelberg died, it should have returned to Null. But he claimed it. And referred it back to himself as Emperor to make the decision. His inconsistency is not new. He is the problem. And we have been making attempts to guide him in the correct way for a number of years. And we believe he is a problem because he is... How do you say it? Says Trot to the side, can't say it. Tell him the real reason we're going to war. He's a cultist of the Dark Gods. And we know. We've been investigating this for 2 years now. It's one of the reasons that he moved against us. It's why he moved against us. Trot. Our Emperor. They got the Emperor. They got our fucking Emperor. Magnus didn't prepare for this. They expected the Empress to be like him.
Is this on your word, Your Grace?
On my word.
On the word of your ancestors?
On the word of my ancestors. They have got him.
It certainly explains a great deal.
There's a reason he's acting so inconsistently. He's not even really your friend anymore, Mackinson. Your friend died.
Do you have proof, Your Grace?
Says, proof can be very difficult to bring to bear. I have proof enough that I have one any to my side. The proof lies very distant from here. Yeah, and is somewhat hidden to us, but not entirely, says Trot. But it is true. Trot smiles, leans back. Our Emperor is lost. As Hexenson says, it is an easy claim to make, but a much more difficult one to be certain of. And I believe cannot be proven, or it would be much simpler. No, it wouldn't. The cult of Sigmar sworn to him. Says Trot. They'd go wherever he says anyway. The cult of Sigmar is as lost as he is now, purely by the very fact that the Emperor is lost. He represents a core figure around which the rest of the cult resolves. He is Sigmar's representative on the throne because he is the Emperor. The cult of Sigmar says that we must follow the Electricans, follow the Emperor. That is what the cult of Sigmar pushes towards. Hexenson says, all true. But what are you going to do, Hexenson, when he finds out that you're being employed by his enemies and he declares the colleges are shut and brings in the cult that swears to protect him? Hexenson says nothing. Young Freud goes, yes, easy to do that, isn't it? Say nothing in difficult times. That is what caused this problem in the first place. No one was talking. And now we are. Holzkrug. Trot. Looks down the table. Holzkrug. Well, if that's the case, then what's the evidence? Give us any clear evidence. Other than this witchery in the line, all the rest of our evidence is distant. No, there's witchery in several lines.
What do you mean by distant? Far away or difficult to get hold of?
Both, says young Freud. It's far away and thus difficult to get hold of. Further, The information is held by a party that is doing everything in their power to stay out of reach for, I think, obvious reasons. But the proof has been seen, and it is quite certain. Wildhoffen was persuaded. Trot says, you don't need to be so nice about it all. Well, it's the truth. Stop teasing, Trot. Wildhoffen was persuaded. And so was Torbringer. He was persuaded for different reasons. Not the same reason. Don't conflate them. Let's keep it simple. Stop trying to make it more complicated, he says. So, where do you sit in all of this, Niemand?
I suppose, as a representative, I'm two people right now. I am the prince, but I am also Neiman. My chief responsibilities to the Empire is to peace within the Empire. That is what the prince sent me to achieve, but he sent me to achieve peace on his terms. But peace is the overarching goal. I find myself on the horns of a dilemma, pulled in two different ways. I would say, however, peace in the Empire is the ultimate goal. And I would say, I stand up, like slowly.
Speech time.
Because he's old.
Yeah.
Because
He's seized up.
Ludendorff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would say it is clear, regardless of what I want or what any of us would want, that the peace I sought, an end to this conflict, is unattainable. The war is here, and while I think it is important to note that there is perhaps disingenuous voices on both sides here, in terms of people's desire for said war, the war is here. The challenge to my other role, the prince, is undeniable, and the best chance for peace would be for him to step down. But I know that he won't step down. And those are the horns of the dilemma on which I find myself. So, therefore, Your Grace, and sort of look at the Duke and sort of step towards him, I formally resign my position as representative of the Prince of Altdorf.
Trot smiles and says, hi, that man.
And make myself available for your service.
As he... So now we have no representative of the prince at the table. Well, that changes the nature and tenor of the conversation. Hallskrug.
And as he looks that way, I'm going to jump at him and stab him.
Yes!
Yelling out, a gift from the Imperial family!
Do yourself a D100 roll!
58.
Nice. Niemand moves with not only a surprising alacrity, but also with an even more surprising fluidity.
Somebody of his age.
Not just his age, what he's wearing.
Mm.
His clothes should ripple and almost snap like a flag, given the speed that he's moved. Silent. Absolute silence. As he moves forward, pulls out nothing. And then the hat falls off. And as it does,
3 halflings.
the second step, all 3 halflings in a hat. No, the second step, as he drops in height by almost a foot. And we have a human who's not more than about 5'2", 5'3", who is dropped much lower than that grey wizard would have appeared. And in his hand is a long, thin blade, pointed at one end, with no crossbar at all. Red runes down its entire length, and they are glowing They are not dwarven runes. As he dips down and goes for the side, all he needs is a single nick. One nick, and the soul is gone.
Wow.
As he plunges, several things happen at once around the room. 58 you got, yeah? I'm going to do my other several things. First, highest up on the initiative is the elf.
No surprise there.
Big shot.
She, who watches it and does literally this. That is how bothered she is by the whole affair.
Classic. Just human things.
Yep, she watches it happen. Next highest is our representative from Nuln. Our representative from Nuln watches it as it goes off on that side. Next is Trot.
This is the one I'm worried about.
Trot, who turns round and sees someone he knows. A fellow student of Valancourt. Valancourt, the finest sword master the Empire has known, now said to be dead. As he twists and makes some pretty lightning fast conclusions and connections. But the most important one isn't what he's doing. Doesn't actually mind as much as some might expect. Minds more than many might expect. But it's who it is. And that is what sets him off. Because unbeknownst to the person that you were sent by, there's history here.
Oh,
We got beef.
They got beef. As he recognizes a knifeman of the Grey College.
Oh.
And I'm just going to compare it to whoever rolls best on this roll to see if he moves. It's going to be as simple as that, because I haven't rolled his one yet. He massively beat you with 90. Oh, yeah, he's way above your 58. I was like, oh, 58! As Ruh-roh! He comes out, the blade like so, and Zenokar moves with a languid movement which completely, almost, I mean, it's easy to be surprised by it given he's dressed in metal. But it's almost lazy as his foot kicks out, twists, causing you to have to duck down underneath it. Not dig down underneath it. That would be quite different.
Move.
Duck down underneath it, which is enough for him to draw a small blade and put it in the way. And that's all he does. He doesn't even want to kill you or do anything else to you, as he pushes it aside and already you're in trouble and you know it. As the blade pushes aside, but you do have the greave. You know what this is. This weapon was made by Cain, the god of murder.
Nice.
A single nick and anyone can die. Anyone.
Roenge.
He beat you week after week after week.
And he thinks he's just
After
beaten me
week.
again.
And he thinks he's just done it again.
Let's show this prick.
So he does have a job, does the knife man. The knife man of zero emotion, the perfect assassin. But it turns out,
One emotion. It's spite.
We can kill him and then we can kill him.
Yeah.
Is there
I'll
no one
quit.
else to act in initiative though?
no one else is fast enough to do it.
Or cares enough.
But after this one round, everyone else can then act. They are basically moving on talent rounds. Okay.
That's shite.
Literally the best roll I can have without a crit, 95.
Yeah. One of the worst ones I
Look
can
at
have.
that!
16. Like man gonna die! He gonna die!
Who's the daddy?
As he twists round in his chair and looks at him and says, "Oh, Bertha, so good to see you."
Bertha.
As she, not he, the knife man, it's apparently a Bertha, darts from side to side, using hands in an attempt to distract him, knowing that if he does any magic, she does any magic at all, it's likely to be stopped by the other parties in here. Vigo is staying separate to this. The elf is over there, so relying purely on the skill, which can't be stopped by anything but skill. Stabs forward once, twice, 3 times as the blade goes forward. And Zenokar, looks at it, watches it, pushes it aside with his blade, and taps her on the head with the butt of his sit.
Oh.
He says,
Oh,
"Cool test."
That's got a sting.
52.
Yeah, you passed. Okay, so you're not in pure frenzy.
Fucking close.
You are pretty young. You're not mechanically in
But pure raging.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
so
pure rager.
We are now actually in rounds.
Okay.
So at the top of the round is the elf. The elf who does this. Sees what the blade is and steps back and starts swearing in Eltharine as it steps back and her eyes start dripping blood at the edge. As she steps back, Kaina, she says. In front of her, Mr. Motts, also responding for everyone else, well, fuck me. He says, the rest of the room are responding as you would expect from the vast majority of them who are not proper warriors, which is the vast majority of them. They respond as you'd expect. Ah! Or ah! Or traitor! The expected responses. But some of them are trained soldiers. Some of them are ready to respond. One of them's right there. One of them's most certainly not right there. And she's like, back off, back away. But you can respond as well if you want, but you are not as high in initiative as our swordsman over here, who is, in fact, one of the finest swordsmen that the Empire knows. He just likes to be modest about the whole affair.
Go, Conrad.
He is not drawing his sword.
Mm-hmm.
He is just running to the back of Niemand and tackling him to the ground.
Oh, so you're going for the whole
Tackling
tackle. Love it.
her.
Nice.
Her.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now you've got more than enough combat aware to be fully aware that that's coming.
always
Do your
interrogate
roll,
him
do
later.
your roll. And we are just going to compare straight off.
50.
23.
Not enough. As you dive forward, she skips forward, using that space to close between her and Tame. Do we have anyone else who's going to respond?
Or the graph, if that's easier. But
Yeah,
or the Duke, rather, if that's easier.
yeah. No, Tame's definitely
Tame's
the easy
definitely
option now because he's right in front of you.
Eliminate
Do we
that
have anyone
roadblock.
else? So none of them are responding. None of them have the
Oh, wait.
group. No. But the
Mecklenburg?
Margrave and Mecklenburg. Yeah.
His skill is really high.
Yeah, it's
So
his.
it's-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like shit. Her skill is almost realms of silly.
Also trained by Valancourt.
Yeah, totally.
Valen
I'm-
Schmore.
Yeah.
More like.
Whatever.
Mecklenburg.
I mean, you've got 4 of Valancourt's top
Mecklenburg
students in this room.
will draw his blade. No, he won't because he got it taken. No, he's running for the table. He's going for Draktuki.
Player.
See your chances, see.
Love it.
Absalom will
I
not come
love it.
anywhere near them. He'll stay back because his father might die. I mean,
No, this is the worst thing ever.
Oh, this is so bad.
Get him,
He's
Dad.
in trouble afterwards if he does live.
as he moves back, going for his sword, so he can definitely looks like he's about to respond, father. As he's going for that, but over by Mecklenburg, he's well trained, but he's on the other side of the table to where they are. So he's going to draw his blade and vault
Do you
over
mean
the
Mackinson?
table. Mackinson,
Yeah.
pardon me. Did I say Mecklenburg?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Mistake there. Should have said Mackinson. Margrave Mackinson from Helgard. He will draw his blade and vault over over the table to try and close between you and you. So this time, Trot gets to go first because Trot's a dick. So do your die, see what you get. Oh, nowhere near as good this time.
82?
That's what you wanted. Okay, as it comes in and you push it aside, and you're ready to strike back. Oh dear.
36.
77. Okay. Strike to injure 8 plus 15 crit. Dead.
Ooh.
As he
I
just
didn't
leans
even
forward.
get to do it.
Nope, as you're just out through the heart of the Grey Knifeman and then back because he lounges in his chair, the blood dripping down over it as he looks. You're bleeding again, Bertha.
Such a dick.
He looks down.
Is that your last words?
You're such a dick.
Okay, you're such a dick, not just such a dick. Okay.
As Do we believe him? Because if that's what the Imperial Court does, then I say, I stand by assertion. Stand by them, and will die for them. Not today.
I think if proof were needed.
I have one thing to say. War is done at the end of an axe, not an assassin's blade.
It's at least.
I stand with young Freud.
Trot. Cringes slightly.
Clan Brintock stands with young Freud. Carrick Ziflin stands with young Freud, and that means the Eye King stands with young Freud. Dawonga. Blood of Dawonga.
Young Freud stands and bows. Oh, as Trot. Did that happen? It's Trot looking surprised and smiles as Margrave, who's now on the other side looking down, uses his blade, pushes aside the scar from the face. I can confirm. Bertha Backer. Grey Knifeman, the college, only responds to the Emperor. Karl Franz must have sent her. There's no one else who can.
Well, I find myself wondering, are there any cult items about their person? Are they part of this cult
Wouldn't need to be.
thing?
I'll tell you a thing or two about cultists. We get many of them up in Harmgard. Says they don't like to assassinate themselves. They send agents. There'll be nothing on this one. I mean, we can look at it, but this is Bertha Backer. She is a college knifeman.
And the Emperor's the only one that could send her. Then I declare him Kinslayer.
And he
It's
looks up.
done.
Oh. Except he literally walks away, his face falling white, as Imrith looks over, her eyes bleeding slightly, and says, "Please, get rid of that blade." As Mr. Motts comes round and throws his cloak down over the blade and goes, "Nasty weapon. Nasty weapon. How nasty? You'd be dead with the slightest nick." Oh, so close. He says, "Are you being serious?" As young Freud bangs the table. "Do not question her." Sorry, Siggy. I sometimes get confused. I don't deal with your kind very often. Please accept my apologies. What you said was obviously said with sincerity. And then he looks at Horsekrug. Oh, don't bring me into this. He says, I mean, it's one thing for us to sit here and talk about it. It's another thing for a knife man to make an attack and to fail. Trot smiles. I've never killed a knife man. Yeah, but it is there, isn't it? It's a thing. Do you support it? Of course I don't support it. But this is Reichland. No. We are Reichland. Karl Franz is a cultist. We may be thieves and beggars and rogues, but at least we're Reichlanders that don't bow to anyone. The gods, fuck them. Fuck them all, he says. I'll bring them down if I have to. I'm a Reichlander. I am a Reichlander. The blood of Sigmar, fuck it. It doesn't mean anything. My line is older than Sigmar himself. The Trots allied with Sigmar, and we will ally with the new Reichland. Whether that's yours, Horsekrug, or whether that is my good friend Siggy here, I don't care. I just care that it is solved, because they hurt him. And then leans back. They hurt him. Margrave wipes a tear and goes, I can't believe that it's actually her. Grow up. You're not a child anymore. How old are you now? You must be in your 30s. I remember when you were a boy. He says, throw that idealism out the window. Throw those fanciful ideas. Just out. They don't matter. People are messy. They're broken. They're hurt. But it doesn't mean they have to fall. He was a weak emperor. And now we see his true quality and how weak he is. He sends assassins. We know that he has fallen, but even if he hadn't, this is what we have. An assassin sent by him. This is how he does his business. And if it is true that the court of Middenheim has also been assaulted, which I am informed by the elect account it is, he would not lie to me. We are very close friends, says Trot. That's it. It's war. It's war. Oswald. Oh, well, I was shit. Yes, I know what you were. But now's the time to start rallying banners, is it not? We have to get rid of him. That's it, really. Nolan, Mr. Mott says, oh, well, you've got a big problem. So you deal with your Reichland civil issues. We'll take the south. I'm your ally in this one. I am your ally in this one, young Freud. If we reach Ulricsberg, it is yours. I will not. We will ride out from Ulricsberg to meet you. So be it, he says. We'll be a while. There are a lot of cannons. He says, we are sending some south and some north, consolidating our borders. He says with a smile, I can't believe how well this went. Says, leaning back. Holzkrug says, this did not turn out well. Speak for yourself. Says, it didn't turn out well. And I am speaking for myself. Because I've concluded that the emperor must be removed. You are correct in your assessment, Guild Mistress. You are correct. Reichland accepts your aid in removing its errant prince. Sigma preserved me, said Holzkrug. Sigma preserves me. Oh, do cheer up, says Trot. A little bit of war will sort this place out. Reichland's been at peace for far too long. We are, after all, warriors. It's what we're supposed to be. It's what we were born to be. The tribes of the Umberrigan are, each and every last one of them, killers. We are Sigma's stock. We are Sigma's heirs. And we are going to show this weak-blooded emperor what it is to be a Reichlander. He smiles. Says, I also am a Reichlander. Would anybody like a drink of wine? He says, I'm slightly drunk. As he sits back and takes a drink. Margrave says, we'd best send off his guard. Oh, shit, says Trot, as he looks over towards the very silent Hoflander in the corner.
He's never actually got up. He's sat with his head in his hands and he's openly weeping.
Oh.
Oh, dear.
I was there. He gave the orders.
Trot leans forward. Don't tell me that you're our proof. As he did, excitement.
The Reichsmarshal spoke to him. This isn't right. This is not how this should be done.
Welcome to the deep and wounded club of Reichland. He says, mayhap send a letter to your father, tell him the true quality of our emperor and our Reichsmarshal. I'm sure your father would appreciate it. Although, from what I hear, your father and he are very close friends. Not untrue. Indeed, you're pretty convinced that that's how you first got your position.
Nepo baby. We do all.
Damn it!
Did he say done? I think he
Yeah,
said it
he
too
said
quick.
done.
Yeah.
Trot smiles. Well, at the very least, you could, I don't know, join a loyalist regiment rather than one of those dark cult groups.
He's wearing what's his badge?
Yes, he is. He's wearing
The first.
Yeah, he's wearing the
regiment.
first regiment's
Yeah,
company
it's-
badge. Take that off.
Yeah.
Nice.
Johann von Mecklenburg is currently standing behind at the back.
I don't like.
Okay, cool. So he's dead. Johann von Mecklenburg, screw that guy.
Fuck that guy.
Is
Then at least he's gone.
What a traitor!
holding the rune fang at the back,
We're gonna. Need
I hope
that
he doesn't draw it, because weird things happen when you draw them.
and he is looking out across the table. Young Freud looks round at him. Are you going to put that away? As he looks down. Sorry, I've just seen something. What have you seen? And he looks around the room. I don't want to say in front of all of these people. He takes the blade and slides it into its scabbard. The last rune with its big coil winks out with light as it slots into place. And he relaxes slightly and puts it down on the table. We're all amongst friends here, says Mr. Motts. Why don't you just say whatever you're going to say? We're already in bed with each other, whether we like it or not. He says, I mean, we're declaring war on the Emperor. Who cares what name he goes by? Prince, Count. Oh, he's also Emperor. I have been to the top of the world, says Johann von Mecklenburg. I have seen what lies there. I have fought with the worst that this world has to offer. And I have seen that one that I fought against right now aims to return.
And it's more hideous than we could possibly
Says-
imagine.
I don't know what it all means, but I do know that it's called Ever Chosen. And that is where we bring our episode to an end.